The first time I met Su Miaoyi was only half an hour before my engagement was broken. It was early spring, the last of the snow and ice had just melted, and the noble young ladies of the capital were all dressed in light silk and brocade. Su Miaoyi alone wore narrow-sleeved riding clothes, with nothing but a wooden hairpin in her hair and a trace of fine white powder on her cuff. She was squatting beside the river, using a willow twig to draw boxes in the sand and connecting them with straight lines. "This is called a flowchart," she explained. "Before you start a task, you break it into steps. Who is responsible for what, how long each part should take. One glance tells you everything." The sons and daughters of noble families crowded around her, listening in fascination. My fiancé Cizhou was among them. He looked at her as though he were gazing at a new moon, his eyes bright with astonishment, and touched with an infatuation I had never seen before. King Tong was so angry that she twisted her handkerchief into a knot. "Young lady, the heir clearly came here with you today." I gently blew the foam from my tea. "He came with me. That does not mean he sold himself to me. If a man truly wanted to change his heart, tying him to one's waist would not stop him from growing legs and running away. Rather than stare at a man, it was better to stare at account books. Account books would never tell you that the two of you were simply incompatible." Sure enough, before I had finished half a cup of tea, Cizhou brought Su Miaoyi over. He looked somewhat uncomfortable, but he still straightened his back. "Zhoning, I have something to tell you." "Please speak, young Lord Qi." He frowned slightly. "You and I have been engaged since childhood. We should have treated each other with mutual respect, but over the past few years I have increasingly felt that you are too proper, too bound by rules. We are not suited to each other." My gaze drifted to the jade pendant at his waist. It was the piece jade I had obtained the previous year after kneeling for 3 days at Zhouhua Temple. At the time, the wife of the Marquis of Jing had been gravely ill, and Qi Heng had told me, "Shen Zhoning, I will never fail you in this life." A man's vows truly were like willow catkins in spring. One gust of wind, and they scattered across the whole sky. Su Miaoyi sighed softly. "Mission, I know this is cruel to you, but feelings cannot be forced. A woman should not live only for an engagement you can go find yourself." I looked at her seriously. What Missu says makes a great deal of sense. For a moment, she did not know how to respond. I took out the engagement document and handed it to Cizhou. "If young Lord Qi believes we are unsuitable, then let us end the engagement." Cizhou frowned. "Zhoning, you do not need to act out of anger. Young Lord Qi misunderstands. I am not angry." I turned towards Su Miaoyi, my eyes resting on the trace of white powder on her sleeve. I had simply realized that, compared with a man whose heart was already elsewhere, Miss Su seemed far more interesting. Su Miaoyi immediately became wary. "What do you mean?" "Nothing." My voice remained gentle. "I only noticed that the substance on your sleeve smells a little like soapberry, but it is much finer." She instinctively pulled her hand into her sleeve. As she turned away, she muttered under her breath, "She's just a vicious supporting character. In 3 years, her whole family will be executed." Her voice was extremely quiet, but just loud enough for me to hear. The abacus in my mind finally clicked onto the most important bead. Losing a man did not matter. But a person who knew exactly how the Shen family would be destroyed 3 years from now absolutely could not be allowed to walk away. News of the broken engagement spread quickly. In less than a day, everyone in the capital knew that the heir of the Jing'an Marquis Manor had ignored the elders of both families and publicly broken his engagement with the legitimate daughter of the Shen family for a mysterious, extraordinary woman of unknown origins. When Mother heard, she asked only, "Did you cry?" "No, do you hate him?" I thought for a moment. Not enough to call it hatred, I just feel that we suffered a loss. Mother raised an eyebrow. I made a list of everything the Shen family had done for the Jing'an Marquis household over the years. The connections we had opened for them, the deficits we had covered, the medicinal materials we had supplied, and the silver we had spent smoothing the way. The list ran to 3 pages. If the engagement had continued, all of that would have been mutual support between 2 families. Now that the engagement was over, we could not pretend none of it had happened. As I finished the final stroke, the tip of my brush accidentally blurred a spot of ink on the paper. The wooden hairpin Qi Heng had given me years ago was worth almost nothing, and its grain was rough. Yet I had kept it at the bottom of my dowry chest. I once thought old things grew heavier with affection the longer one kept them. Only later did I understand that what grew heavy was not the object, but one's reluctance to let go. King Tong had expected me to cry. Instead, I took out the old wooden hairpin and placed it beside the stack of debt records. Accounts could be reopened to settle old debts. People could not. Once people reopened old memories, their hearts softened too easily. After Mother finished reading, she reached out and stroked my head. The fact that it hurts proves you were sincere, but pain is pain. Emotional debts are difficult to collect. Silver debts are much easier. On the third day, the elders of both families met to return the birth date cards and engagement tokens. At the same time, the Shen family sent an itemized debt statement to the Jing'an Marquis Manor and stopped advancing money for its medicinal supplies and estate rents. Qi Hing was furious enough to come to our door himself. At the time, I was receiving the senior shop managers in the front hall and listening to this summer's projected ice prices. The Shen family already owned tea houses, an oil pressing workshop, silk shops, and 3 warehouses. What we lacked was not storefronts or manpower, but new ways to make old businesses grow in hot weather. Ice was extremely scarce in the capital. Wealthy families were willing to pay a high price for it, while ordinary people could only rely on well water to cool themselves. One senior manager sighed. If we could get even a little more ice, the tea houses would make at least twice as much profit this year. At that moment, Qi Heng entered with a cold expression. Shenjining, when did you become so calculating? Su Miaoyi followed behind him. Today she had changed into a pale green dress, but the faint scent of soap still clung to her cuffs. I said, young Lord Qi arrived at just the right time. If anything in the statement is unclear, you may verify it with the accounting office. Qi Heng's face darkened. After so many years between us, you are weighing our relationship in silver? Besides, Prince Zhao's household has taken notice of Miaoyi. In the future, the Marquis Manor may not even need the Shen family's help. You were the one who traded our relationship for your future, I replied. What remains with me is simply capital that ought to be recovered. Su Miaoyi could not help speaking. Mission, feelings are not a business transaction. Acting like this only makes you look more pitiful. I nodded. Miss Su is absolutely right. All the words she had prepared seemed to jam behind that single nod. Then I changed the subject. I hear Miss Su knows how to make ice. A trace of pride flashed through her eyes, a littles. Qi Heng immediately added, Miaoyi is exceptionally clever. She says that if saltpeter is added to water, it can draw away heat and make ice. Every senior manager in the hall looked up at once. I ordered someone to bring paper, brush, and a blank contract. Naturally, we cannot take your method for nothing. Su Miaoyi smiled. Where I come from, it is only common knowledge. Excellent. Common knowledge is the easiest thing to scale. I propose that she provide the method while the Shen family provided the capital, manpower, and shops. We would test it for 3 days. If it worked, she would receive 30% of the first month's net profit. The smile on Su Miaoyi's lips froze. Qi Heng frowned. 30% and you think you can buy her skill? This is not a buyout, it is a partnership. I looked at Su Miaoyi. The method may only be used in the shops covered by the agreement, and the ice business will display your name. This time, Qi Heng did not answer on her behalf. Su Miaoyi read the contract twice. She personally added a clause requiring her name to be credited before writing down the ice-making process. I agreed immediately. Each side kept 1 copy of the contract. 3 days later, the first trial batch of ice succeeded. The Shen family's ice shop officially opened beneath a sign reading, Miaoyi brings relief to the people, a name Su Miaoyi had chosen herself. That was the first time Su Miaoyi became famous throughout the capital. At the end of the first month, she received her 30% share of the profit, while I still earned more than the old tea house had made during an entire summer. The line outside the ice shop had not even disappeared when Su Miaoyi stormed to my door. She was not complaining that her share was too small. She had discovered that the selling price set by the Shen family was higher than she had expected, while the contract did not specify who had the right to set prices. You are using my name to advertise relief for the people. Why am I not allowed to see the costs? After hearing her out, I felt deeply apologetic, so I said someone bring her a bowl of iced milk dessert. Miss Su, calm down first. Ice made with your method really does make this taste excellent, she glared at me. This is called information asymmetry. I nodded. What an interesting new phrase, write it down. The bookkeeper beside me immediately picked up his brush. Su Miaoyi choked on her own anger and remained speechless for a long while. I set down my silver spoon and pushed the cost sheet toward her. It listed saltpeter, labor, and wastage. This was my oversight. The contract states your profit share, but it does not state your right to inspect the accounts or participate in pricing. The anger she had worked up suddenly faltered. You admit you were wrong? If the accounts are wrong, we correct them. Why would I be afraid to admit it? She lowered her head to study the figures, and her expression gradually became serious. Did you think that apart from a few formulas, I know nothing? Yes. She clearly had not expected such a direct answer. If you do not know something, you can learn it, I added. If you use all your ability merely to decorate Qihing's reputation, that would be the real waste. I ordered the contract rewritten. This time, all costs, selling prices and losses were fully disclosed to her. Any future change in price would require agreement from both sides. Su Miaoyi read it from beginning to end and personally wrote her name beside the pricing clause. I did not make things difficult for her. I sealed it at once. When she left, she took both the new contract and the account books with her. King Tong looked worried. Young lady, those are the Shen family's books. Precisely because they are the Shen family's books, it is a good thing if she is willing to learn to understand them. A person who reads a contract carefully to protect her own interests is a better partner than someone who only gets angry for the sake of pride. Besides, she had finally learned to make a move of her own. What I liked most was when the other side made moves. Only when both parties acted and responded could business last. Unfortunately, she still refused to say anything about what would happen to the Shen family 3 years from now. I could only continue doing business with her while quietly investigating where she had truly come from. At Mingyu House, the air was thick with perfume, and hot tea steamed in the hall. When Su Miaoyi took out a snow-white bar of soap, she looked as though she were holding a small moon in her hands. Every noble lady and madam in the hall unconsciously leaned forward. This cleans better than soapberries, costs less than bath beans, and even ordinary people can afford it. Qiheng stood beside her, pride filling his eyes. Miaoyi always thinks of the common people. Unlike certain people, she does not turn every good deed into a business. Teacups clicked softly throughout the hall. The ladies exchanged discreet glances. I was choosing rouge with mother. Since I had been called out, I obediently answered, young Lord Qi is quite right. Su Miaoyi liked moments like this. She liked everyone looking at her. She liked the pride in Qiheng's eyes. She liked the feeling that she could casually produce something and leave an entire era speechless. She asked a young maidservant to try the soap. After washing her hands, the maid exclaimed happily, "It really is clean and smooth. And it smells good too." The banquet immediately grew lively. Su Miaoyi looked toward me. "Miss Shen, this time you are not going to say for the people and then decide everything for me again, are you?" I sighed. Why does Miss Su always assume I am so greedy for money? She gave a cold laugh. Are you not? Of course not. I turned to King Tong. The aunties who sell soapberries in the alley behind us asked to see me. Invite them in. Su Miaoyi's fingertips curled slightly. What are you planning? Before long, several plainly dressed women were led into the hall. Surrounded by silk and brocade, they were so nervous that they did not know where to put their hands. For years, they had sold soapberries and bath beans at the alley entrance. Most of them supported households with disabled husbands or young children. Their families depended on that small trade. I pointed at the soap. Miss Su says this is cheaper and better and can replace soapberries. What do you think? The women went pale. If it really replaces soapberries, what will we sell? Our old and young all depend on this for food. The light in Su Miaoyi's eyes turned confused. At last she understood that the word replace, when it fell into someone else's life, could mean losing the means to eat. She hurried to explain. I did not mean that. I only wanted everyone to have something better. A new product needs people to make it, people to sell it, and people to keep the accounts, I said. Let these women enter the workshop and learn soap making. They can keep their livelihoods, while your formula can actually become a product used on a large scale. Su Miaoyi did not agree immediately. She first asked how much the wages would be and who would bear the loss if a batch failed. I told the accounting office to write every one of those points into the contract. Only then did she press her thumbprint onto it. This time, she had not been pressured by an entire hall of watching eyes into surrendering her formula. She had made the decision herself. That afternoon, the contract establishing the Shen family's first soap workshop was signed. It was named the Miaoyi Soap Works. The first 3 batches failed completely. Su Miaoyi remembered the principle, but she could not determine the proper temperature of the oil or the correct proportion of lye water. Madame Zhao was ruthless about experimentation. She discarded 3 ruined cauldrons of oil without hesitation and led the women through trial after trial. Su Miaoyi stood in the middle of them while everyone kept asking, how hot exactly should the oil be? How much lye is enough? Her expression was awful, worse than stove ash. King Tong asked me quietly, young lady, will she die of anger? I brushed aside the foam on my tea. No, she cannot bear to give up. On the 8th day, she and Madame Zhao finally produced the first batch of soap, good enough to sell. From that day forward, she never again said that it was only common knowledge. Once the soap workshop began shipping goods, Qiheng finally lost his patience. Su Miaoyi's extraordinary techniques were supposed to be the new future he had wagered on for the Marquis Manor, yet now both the fame and the business had bypassed him. He stopped me outside a bookshop. Xin Jiaoning, stop taking advantage of Miaoyi. I was looking at an agricultural compendium on the shelf and did not even raise my head. I helped her become famous. I pay her a monthly salary. I built workshops for her. I even gave the principal. She is always talking about equality, a place where it can actually be practiced. How is that exploitation? Qiheng had no answer. After a long while, he said in a low voice, "You know she does not understand the schemes of great families. Prince Zhao intends to bring her inventions into the Imperial Commerce Bureau. If you bind her to the Shen family, she may miss the chance to rise in a single step." At last I understood why he had dared to break our engagement. He had not only fallen in love with Su Miaoyi's novelty. He was also convinced that she could replace the silver the Shen family had withdrawn from the Marquis Manor, and perhaps even use Prince Zhao's influence to free the household from ever having to consider the Shen family's wishes again. In his eyes, Su Miaoyi did not represent innocence. She represented a shortcut faster than marriage. If that was called true love, then even the abexes in the Shen accounting office deserved to be praised for devotion. I closed the book. Young Lord Qi may rest assured. I will not harm her. You had better not. I glanced at him. After all, she is very valuable now. Qiheng's expression grew even uglier. I stepped around him to leave, but he caught my wrist. Zoning, you were not like this before. I lowered my eyes to his hand. He seemed to remember that our engagement had already ended. His fingers stiffened for a moment, but he still did not release me. Before, you were gentle and proper. You never pressed people this aggressively. I asked softly. When young Lord Qi says before, do you mean when I helped you build connections, found renowned physicians for your mother, covered the Marquis Manor's deficits, and still smiled while you praised me for being virtuous? His pupils contracted. I pulled my hand free. That was not gentleness. I did those things because I was willing. Now I am not. As I turned away, I saw a man leaning against a pillar in the covered corridor, a book in his hand and an expression of casual amusement. Yan Cizhou, Deputy Minister of the Court of Judicial Review. He came from a poor family, placed third in the imperial examination at 20, entered the Court of Judicial Review at 23, and was especially skilled at tracing accounts and solving cases. Corrupt officials in the capital supposedly lost half their appetite simply from hearing his name. He looked at me. What Mission just said was excellent. I inclined myself politely. Deputy Minister Yan is also very skilled at listening from around corners. He smiled. I merely happened to pass by. My eyes fell to the book in his hand. You are holding it upside down. Without changing expression, Yan Cizhou calmly turned the book the right way up. Not anymore. Only much later did I learn that his appearance that day had not been accidental at all. He had been investigating the old accounts of the Jing'an Marquis Manor. Over the previous 6 months, a large sum of money, from an unclear source, had suddenly begun circulating through the manor. The loan had been taken under the name of an outside trading house, but behind it were connections to Prince Zhao's household. It was not that Qiheng failed to understand how hollow the Marquis Manor had become beneath its impressive exterior. He simply believed Su Miaoyi could help the household bypass the Shen family and climb directly toward a more powerful patron. What he had always hated was not the smell of money. It was money being in someone else's hands. What he hated even more was that the person who had always willingly supported him had suddenly begun settling accounts with him clearly. By the Empress Dowager's birthday banquet, Su Miaoyi's ice and soap had already been tested repeatedly by the Ministry of Works. The Jing'an Marquis Manor took the opportunity to submit a memorial recommending her as a rare talent from among the common people, which finally gave her the chance to enter the palace and present a lamp. She offered a glass lamp. There was no visible flame inside it, yet the light was clear and bright like moonlight. The palace lanterns around it cast their usual warm golden glow, but when Su Miaoyi's lamp lit up, even the magnificent gilded hall seemed to quiet for a moment. The Empress Dowager smiled. What a novel object! Su Miaoyi knelt in the center of the hall and said clearly, I humbly present this lamp to your majesty. May your majesty remain in good health, and may Great Liang one day have no dark alleys at night, so that everyone may have light. Beautiful words and a beautiful wish. Qiheng looked at her with such tenderness that his gaze nearly melted. I sat among the women's seats, studying the lamp carefully. There was no lightning trapped inside it and no immortal art. It was only a slender wick soaked in specially prepared oil, enclosed in thin glass, and aided by polished copper reflectors that gathered and intensified the light. None of that prevented it from being profitable. After the banquet, noble ladies surrounded Su Miaoyi, each wanting to order one of the glass lamps. Instinctively, she looked at me. This time, the look in her eyes held not only competitiveness but also a little nervousness, as if she were waiting for me to find a flaw. I gave her an encouraging smile. She immediately became suspicious. "Shen Zhongning, what are you planning this time?" I set down my teacup. "Miss Su misunderstands, I am simply happy for you." Then the Empress Dowager's senior attendant spoke. "Miss Su, if these lamps were placed along the palace roads, could they cause a fire?" Su Miaoyi froze. "Probably not, I think." The attendant did not speak loudly, but all the palace attendants along the hall lowered their heads at once. Inside the palace, the most dangerous words were "probably" and "I think." Qi Heng immediately answered for her. "Since Miaoyi made it, of course she knows it is safe," I said quietly. "If it is to be used in the palace, we should first test the oil, wick, wind direction and glass thickness, and then establish a fixed production standard. Miss Su has the idea the Shen family has workshops and craftsmen. We can first produce trial palace lamp models, test them thoroughly, and only then formally submit them." The Empress Dowager looked at me. "Can the Shen family do this?" "Yes, but the idea belongs to Miss Su. I would not dare claim her merit. The Shen family would be responsible only for trial production and inspection." At the word inspection, Su Miaoyi's tense shoulders finally relaxed slightly. She had ideas. The Shen family had procedures and standards to turn those ideas into reality. Neither side needed to swallow all the credit, and neither side was permitted to push all the risk onto the other. The Empress Dowager nodded. "Then let the Shen family supervise production. Miss Su will cooperate." After returning home, I ordered the craftsmen at the lamp workshop to engrave an extremely small Shen mark beneath the base of every palace lamp. We also recorded every fire-resistant layer, every batch of oil, and every craftsman responsible for production. The hidden mark would become visible when exposed to flame. The profit accounts were kept in duplicate, one copy at the lamp workshop and one in the central accounting office. Tong asked, "Young lady, why are you being so careful?" I brushed the foam from my tea. "In business you must guard against people stealing your methods. When doing business with the Imperial Palace, you must also guard against people stealing them and then denying the debt." Some precautions had to be taken in advance. There was no reason to wait until the blade was already falling before remembering to raise a shield. In the end, the Shen family coordinated all production of the palace lamps. Su Miaoyi, however, began to feel that her marvelous ideas were being bound by layer after layer of rules from old aristocratic households, so she started avoiding me. She stopped going to the soap workshop, the ice shop, and the glass lamp workshop. Qi Heng felt sorry for her and came personally to the Shen residence, demanding an explanation, accusing me of pushing her too far. I had the accounting office place the contracts and profit-sharing records for the ice, soap, and lamp projects in front of him. The approved scope of use, responsibility for losses, and Su Miaoyi's share of profit were all written clearly item by item. Miss Su has not signed a long-term contract, but every project reserves her agreed share. Last month she received 126 taels of silver, many times the monthly allowance paid to her by the Jing'an Marquis Manor. Qi Heng fell silent. Then I brought out the employment lists for the workshops. The soapworks now employs 87 women. The ice business employs 32 porters. The lamp workshop contracts 16 artisan households. If young Lord Qi wants her to leave, first ask whether she is willing to give up the wages and livelihoods tied to these operations. Qi Heng's expression changed. "Why are you using the people's livelihoods to threaten me?" I looked at him. "You were the one who accused me of forcing her." Before I finished, Su Miaoyi entered through the door. She had clearly heard the entire argument. Her eyes were red, but in her hands she still clutched the contract she had personally amended. "Shen Zhongning, I am not your money-making tool, and I do not want other people deciding where I should go anymore." This time I did not answer for her. Nor did I continue using other people's livelihoods as pressure. She needed to negotiate her own terms. I took the contract from her, then become a partner, deputy manager of the Novel Inventions Office, transparent accounts, a fixed profit share. For projects within an approved budget, you may choose what to test, but if a project loses money, part of that loss will be charged against your profit share. The room became quiet. Su Miaoyi looked at the clauses she herself had written. The anger in her eyes gradually settled into hesitation. She was not wavering, because my argument was especially eloquent. She had already held bank drafts in her own hands. She had heard female workers respectfully call her Miss Su. She had seen with her own eyes that one small idea from her could give an entire group of people a livelihood. A person who had been utterly ordinary in her old world had suddenly become a treasure in everyone's eyes. How could she bear to let that go? Qi Hing grew anxious. Miaoyi, do not let her fool you. Great families like the Shens are best at devouring people, without leaving even the bones. I looked at him. Is young Lord Qi insulting your future fiancé's business partner, or the workshops that supply ice and soap to the people of the capital every day? Qi Heng's face turned livid. Su Miaoyi suddenly asked, if I sign, will you really let me take part in decisions instead of only making me hand over formulas? I set the Cinnabar seal box aside. Budget and staffing must be approved by the Central Accounting Office. But how you conduct trials and how you modify your methods may be your own decisions. The hope that had just appeared in her eyes did not disappear this time. Still, she was not entirely satisfied. Everyone being equal does not mean a newcomer can become chief manager the moment she arrives, I said. You must know how to keep accounts, inspect goods, and manage people. If you want your words to carry weight, begin as deputy manager. She laughed from sheer anger. I am a transmi. Her voice stopped abruptly. My finger paused on the edge of the contract. What? Su Miaoyi clearly realized she had let something slip. She snatched up the contract and turned to leave. Let me think about it. After she left, Yan Cizhou entered from the outer room. He had been invited to compare records relating to the Marquis Manor's loans. I looked at him. Deputy Minister Yan, are you just passing by again? He smiled. This time you invited me. I poured him tea. You heard the word she almost said just now? Yan Cizhou nodded. I tapped a fingertip lightly on the table. Su Miaoyi is no ordinary prodigy, and Prince Zhao's household seems to have realized that even earlier than we did. My interest in her had changed from making money to finding out exactly where she came from and exactly how much she knew. Yan Cizhou worked quickly, but he was not starting from nothing. After the glass lamp entered the palace, Prince Zhao's household had secretly contacted craftsmen from the Shen workshops. The Marquis Manor's unexplained loan had also passed through the same outside trading house. Yan Cizhou followed that trail while rechecking the Marquis Manor's old accounts. Once I told him about Su Miaoyi's strange behavior, the two lines of investigation finally joined together. 3 days later, he brought me a dossier. Su Miaoyi's original name was Su Sanyang. She was the daughter of a salt-making household in Jiangzhou. Half a year ago, she fell into the water. After waking, her personality changed completely. Before the accident, she could barely read. Afterward, she suddenly knew how to make ice, produce soap, draw technical diagrams, and keep accounts. She also began using strange expressions no one around her understood. Qi Heng had met her at a country residence in Jiangzhou. After bringing her back to the capital, he arranged for her to live under the identity of a distant relative of the Marquis house. A water stain marked one corner of the dossier. Yan Cizhou continued. After nearly drowning, she became deeply afraid of water. At the Jing'an Marquis Manor, she insisted on keeping 2 lamps burning at night. She would not even let the maidservants fill her wash basin all the way. My fingertips paused. So she was afraid too. A person who feared water and darkness still lifted her chin every day and declared that she was the protagonist. Some arrogance existed only to cover fear. Did you find the mysterious expert who taught her? I asked. No, but she once quarreled with someone at Suxian House and said something unusual. What? She said this world was nothing more than a book. In that book, she would use her extraordinary techniques to help Qi Heng revive the Marquis Manor and become the widely praised wife of the heir. The Shen family would be destroyed in a commercial tax case. A book? I looked at him. Do you believe it, Deputy Minister? Yan Cizhou closed the dossier. I believe evidence. Then we are the same. Whether we believe the book is not important. What matters is that the book seems to describe only outcomes. It does not explain how a single coin moved from hand to hand, or how many lives were crushed beneath each outcome. If Su Miaoyi treated that book as heaven's will, it would be easy for her to regard the people around her as pieces of paper that existed only to push the plot forward. If Prince Zhao treated the future she knew as a commodity, then the Shen family would not be the only people in danger. That night, Su Miaoyi finally came to find me. She had changed into a pale-colored dress. Her eyes were unusually bright. Shinjoning, I can sign the contract, but I want 30% of the profits. 30%? Yes, without me, you cannot accomplish any of this. Has Miss forgotten the ice shop? Soap workshop and lamp workshop are already operating. Without you, they can continue. The brightness in her eyes dimmed for an instant. What you can sell now is not what you have already told us, I continued. But what you still have not said. She fell silent. I took out a different contract. 10% of the profits, the position of deputy manager of the Novel Inventions Office, and in addition, a private courtyard, guards, and a separate accounting room. If you develop a new method, the Shen family provides the capital and manpower. and you receive an agreed commission. She stared at the contract, her fingertips trembling. Shenzhoning, do not get too pleased with yourself. I pushed the cinnabar ink box toward her. You are saying that rather early. The contract is not signed and the silver has not been divided. Neither of us has reached the point where we can be pleased yet. She suddenly lowered her voice. If you heard what I said at the Shaanxi festival banquet, then I will make it clearer in the book. Qiheng uses my inventions to revive the Marquis manor. You are only the vicious supporting character. 3 years from now, the Shen family's banking scandal is exposed. Your father is imprisoned, your mother dies from illness. The female workers connected to your family are sent to the State Entertainment Bureau as penal servants, and you kneel before the Meridian Gate begging me to spare you. The candle flame trembled. The teacup in King Tong's hand tapped lightly against the tray. Su Miaoyi thought she had frightened me, but I was thinking of the Shen family's account books accumulated over so many years, stacked as high as half a person. Page after page contained shops, clerks, female workers, soldiers' dependents, orphans, and widows. The phrase, your whole family is executed, spoken so casually from her mouth, did not mean only the lives of the Shen masters. It meant an entire network of living people who depended on the Shen family to survive. I slowly raised my eyes. You said that I would kneel and beg you? Her lips went white from a chest. I took out an old confidential ledger. It was not grandmother's dying message, nor some prophecy sent down from heaven. It was a risk register I had personally compiled over the years for every branch of the Shen family's holdings: salt tax, commercial tax, female-headed household registration, banking houses, imperial commerce. Beside each category, I had marked in cinnabar the possible dead ends that could destroy us. The final page had originally contained only one line: commercial tax case erupts, the Shen family collapses. I picked up my cinnabar brush and slowly added a note after it: the witness. Su Miaoyi's pupils contracted. I placed the confidential ledger in front of her. My voice was gentle enough to sound almost frightening. Su Miaoyi, does the book in your head say clearly whether the person who sends my Shen family to ruin 3 years from now is you? At last her expression changed. A moment ago she had resembled a cat with its fur raised. Now she looked as though her voice had been caught in her throat. I did not hurry her. I simply poured myself tea. After a long time, she gritted her teeth. I do not know. The book only says the Shen family embezzles commercial taxes, lends money at ruinous rates, and forces common people to sell their children, until the family is finally stripped of its property. Qiheng is the male lead who rescues people in hardship. Prince Zhao is the powerful patron who recognizes my talent, and he is also the one who exposes the Shen family's crimes. So what she knew was merely a story written to entertain readers, not a case file that could survive investigation. Who was evil, who was good, who died, and who rose to glory were all declared with absolute certainty. But why Prince Zhao happened to learn about illegal salt, dealing at exactly the right moment, why witnesses suddenly changed their testimony, and why an archive warehouse mysteriously caught fire, none of that was mentioned. I asked, does the book say how much silver the Shen family gives up this year by selling ice at a controlled price? Does it say how many unemployed women the soap workshop takes in? Does it say that every receipt and expenditure from the palace lamp workshop is recorded? She clenched her sleeve. Maybe you only become bad later. Perhaps, I nodded. Which is precisely why I need to know who forces me to become bad. Su Miaoyi stared at me. I pushed the contract toward her again. I will give you 2 choices. First, leave the Shen family and follow the path written in your book. Second, stay and write down every future milestone you know, so Deputy Minister Yan and I can verify them one by one. You may distrust me, but at least stop treating a storybook as evidence. She stared back. Are you not afraid I will deceive you? I am, so from today onward, every statement you make about the future will be placed in a separate record. If an investigation verifies it, we will price the information separately. If you deliberately hide an important name or intentionally mislead us, your profit share will be reduced according to the contract, and the partnership may be terminated. She laughed coldly. And what else can you do to me? You will return to the soap workshop and relearn everything from the accounts and the process. Her cold smile froze. That is not punishment, I said. It is so you understand how many hands a single sentence must pass through before it lands in the real world. She seemed to remember all the women who had once questioned her until she doubted her own sanity. After a long time, she pressed her thumbprint onto the contract. The cinnabar thumbprint on the paper looked like a tiny blood-red mark. I put the contract away. From today onward, you are deputy manager of the Shen family's novel inventions office. Monthly salary 20 taels of silver, profit share 10%. Any information about the future that proves accurate will be priced separately. Su Miaoyi said hoarsely, Xinjiang, you really are a black-hearted boss. I gently blew the excess cinnabar powder from the document. Thank you for the compliment. After she left, King Tong's legs nearly gave way. She had to brace herself against the table. Young lady, 3 years from now, will the Shen family really? I opened the confidential ledger. My fingertip rested on the entries for salt tax, banking houses, and female-headed household registration. Before, they were only possible risks. Now they are confirmed dangers. King Tong's eyes reddened. Then what do we do? I closed the ledger and looked into the darkness beyond the door. Make money, train people, audit the books, build new routes. If someone intends to kill the Shen family 3 years from now, then I will use these 3 years to buy the weapon out of his hand first. On Su Miaoyi's first day in the Novel Inventions office, she became the center of a joke. She slapped the table and announced that she wanted to establish an assembly line. Veteran workshop manager, Madame Zhao silenced her with 3 questions. How many bars of soap can you make in one day? How many caddies of oil does each cauldron consume? If the price of fragrance rises, does the selling price change? Su Miaoyi glared. Those things can be calculated later. Madame Zhao smiled without warmth. Deputy Manager Su, there are 300 mouths depending on this workshop. They cannot wait until later to be fed. I sat beside them drinking tea and did not interfere. If she wanted authority, she first had to learn responsibility. By the end of the morning, she had finally stopped saying, "You ancient people do not understand." Every time she opened her mouth. That afternoon, Madame Zhao threw 3 messy subsidiary ledgers at her. The general ledger is missing. Reconstruct it by cross-checking these detailed books. Su Miaoyi slapped the table again. You are deliberately making things difficult for me. Madame Zhao merely lifted her eyelids. When a business is hit by fire or flood, or a shop manager runs away, do those problems send you advance notice? If an accountant can only read a complete general ledger placed neatly in front of her, she might as well go home and embroider. That night, Su Miaoyi did not return to the west courtyard. When I passed the accounting room, I found her slumped over the desk. Her fingertips had been rubbed red by the abacus beads. She was muttering that Madame Zhao was cruel while tracing each inconsistent entry from the fragrance shop, all the way back to the soap workshop's warehouse. I asked King Tong to bring her a bowl of sweet porridge. She held the bowl and looked at me suspiciously. Did you poison it? I smiled at her. She snorted, took 2 mouthfuls, then asked in a small voice, is there more? No matter how miraculous a transmigrated woman might be, she still had to eat when she was hungry. Early the next morning, she appeared with dark circles beneath her eyes and threw the reconciled ledger in front of Madame Zhao. Madame Zhao flipped through it and said only, acceptable. Su Miaoyi looked happier than if she had placed first in the imperial examination. Half a month later, soap production had doubled. She suggested dividing the soap into 3 categories, for laundry, bathing and hand washing, and using different packaging colors to distinguish them. Madame Zhao initially looked down on the idea, but after a trial run, sales did indeed rise sharply. In front of everyone, I raised Su Miaoyi's monthly salary by 10 taels. She stared at the bank draft. You are really giving this to me. Good work earns rewards. The Shen family does not mistreat people who know how to make money. She gripped the bank draft for a long time without speaking. Su Miaoyi was not inherently hateful. She had simply arrived in an era she looked down upon with an entire storehouse of new knowledge, eager to prove that she was different. But difference did not need to be proved by stepping on other people. If being different could still help other people earn a living, that what was truly counted as ability. She disliked Su Miaoyi working for the Shen family. He thought it humiliated her. At first Su Miaoyi thought so too until the first time she received 300 taels of profit share. That day, she stared at the bank draft for a very long time and asked me, can I buy a house? Of course. Can I register a female-headed household in my own name? Yes, the Shan family can handle the procedure for you, but you still have to pay the tax. Her eyes gradually lit up. When Qiheng came to pick her up, he happened to see her discussing with the accountants which district she should buy in. His face immediately darkened. Prince Zhao's household had promised that if Su Miaoyi presented 2 more extraordinary inventions, they would place the Jing'an Marquis Manor on the list of imperial merchants. Miaoyi, why buy a house yourself? Qiheng asked. If you marry me, the Marquis Manor will naturally give you your own courtyard. Once the Imperial Commerce Bureau is established, you can do whatever you wish. Su Miaoyi raised her head. But that would belong to the Marquis Manor, not to me. Watching her put away her bank draft, Qiheng looked even worse than when our engagement had been broken in public. It was not that he failed to understand the appeal of silver. He simply could not accept that Su Miaoyi's first house would not be something he gave her, that the first money truly her own would not come from him, and that even her first fame was no longer being used to pave the way for his family. I lowered my head to drink tea and nearly failed to suppress a laugh. Good, now she was talking sense. Qing looked at me. You taught her these things. I looked innocent. I only taught her to read accounts. Su Miaoyi put away the bank draft and said, Qi-hung, I think Zhou Ning is right. A woman should have money of her own. Qi-hung said in a low voice, did you not hate the smell of money before? Can a few bank drafts compare with the future Prince Zhao can offer you? Su Miaoyi answered with complete seriousness. That was because I did not have any before. This time I laughed out loud. Qi-hing looked at me coldly. Sorry, I said. I could not help it. From that day, Qi-hung and Su Miaoyi had their first major quarrel. He wanted her to visit the workshops less and spend more time attending banquets with him. Su Miaoyi asked, do banquets pay profit shares? Qi-hung could not answer. Then she asked, will you allow my name to appear as a signatory in the Marquis Manor's account books? Qi-hung was both embarrassed and angry. Why have you become as calculating as Shen Zhaoning? Su Miaoyi was so furious that she slammed the door and left. That night, she arrived at the Shen residence carrying a pillow. King Tong was startled. Young lady deputy manager Su says she wants to stay here. I looked at the woman standing outside the door. Her eyes were red, but she was trying very hard to appear calm. Give her the west courtyard, Su Miaoyi said awkwardly. I will pay rent. My immediate agreement left her speechless. Even real sisters should keep clear accounts, I said. She was speechless for a long moment before calling me a profiteer. I happily accepted the insult. After Su Miaoyi moved into the Shen residence, the efficiency of the Novel Inventions Office increased at an astonishing rate. During the day, she learned bookkeeping and inspected processes. At night, she wrote what she called plans. I did not understand all the strange symbols she used, but I understood results. The soap workshop's profit rose, costs at the ice shops fell. The lamp workshop received a second order from the palace at last. Even the Shen elders began looking at her differently. Father asked me, can this woman be controlled? You cannot judge a person only by whether she can be controlled. I remembered the way Su Miaoyi revised every sentence of her contracts. A contract could bind interests, but it could not bind the part of her heart that still wanted to be the protagonist. Father asked, what if she still wants to leave? I closed the accounts, then let her see clearly what each road costs and choose for herself. Father looked at me for a long time. If your grandmother had understood that earlier, she would not have spent so many years reluctant to entrust people with responsibility, while constantly suspecting that they would betray her. This time, I did not take it as praise. Not long afterward, a message came from the palace. Prince Zhao wanted to meet Su Miaoyi, in the name of recruiting talent for the Imperial Commerce Bureau. The invitation was delivered personally by Qi-hing. Clearly, the Marquis Manor had already built the bridge between them. In recent years, Prince Zhao had been drawing merchants and newly risen families to his side. What he wanted was never merely one lamp or one bar of soap. He wanted a route that could bypass the Ministry of Revenue and the old aristocratic families, and directly mobilize the flow of money among the people. What he had always lacked was not an extraordinary woman, but a financial channel he could control without going through either the Ministry of Revenue or the established great houses. Su Miaoyi was the key. The Shen family's banking network was the door. Su Miaoyi herself was extremely excited. A prince wants to see me. Does that not prove I can finally decide my own life? Decide what? I asked. A position as secondary consort? An Imperial Commerce Bureau that does not yet exist? I set down my brush. Is that enough to call being master of your own fate? Is your life now not already good? You have money, a house, workshops, and a reputation. She turned her face away. At the Shen family, no matter how capable I am only a deputy manager. You will always guard against me. You will always hold the final seal. The book about the protagonist in her heart had still not closed, and I had always believed that if the contract was detailed enough, even such dissatisfaction could be calculated into it. I did not stop her from meeting Prince Zhao. That was the first time I made the mistake of treating a human heart like a contract clause. I knew Prince Zhao would probe her, but after so many verifications, I assumed she at least understood that knowledge of the future could not be casually traded for advancement. I had overestimated contracts. I had also overestimated how well I understood her. Even so, I had King Tong prepare a dignified set of clothes for her, and placed a copy of her Novel Inventions Office contract into a box for her to carry. Su Miaoyi looked puzzled. Why bring this? So that your noble patron understands how valuable you are now. She took it as a compliment, lifted her chin, and walked into Prince Zhao's residence. I turned around and went to the court of judicial review. Yan Cizhou raised an eyebrow when he saw me. Does Miss Shin have another business opportunity? I placed a list of lamp workshop craftsmen secretly contacted by Prince Zhao's household in front of him. No, a case. Yan Cizhou looked through the names. Afraid he will lure Su Miaoyi away? I am not afraid she will leave. Then what are you afraid of? I am afraid she thinks she is holding the future and sells that future to the person who should never be allowed to buy it. Yan Cizhou was silent for a moment. Prince Zhao will not simply seize her by force. Why not? Because forcibly taking someone regarded as an auspicious omen would look terrible. His fingertips tapped lightly against the list. He will promise her status, power, and a place high enough for the world to look up at her. He will make her walk to him herself. Clever people were the most troublesome. Even when they harmed others, they knew how to wrap the handle of the knife in brocade. As expected, Prince Zhao wanted to recruit Su Miaoyi, and Qiheng was the one who arranged the introduction. The Marquis Manor pledged its estates and trading houses as security in exchange for Prince Zhao's promise to include Su Miaoyi's inventions in the imperial merchant system. Prince Zhao promised her the status of secondary consort. He also promised to place a separate imperial commerce bureau under her management, with every new method recorded under her name. For someone who constantly felt restrained by me, that final promise was even more attractive than rank. More dangerously, he had drawn one piece of information out of her. Next spring, the salt routes in Jiangzhou would fall into turmoil. When Su Miaoyi returned, she looked as though she were walking on clouds. She asked me, "If I go to Prince Zhao's residence, will you stop me?" I was auditing losses from the lamp workshop. No, she looked surprised. The contract is very clear. If you terminate it unilaterally, all unfinished projects must be settled. If you take technical drawings with you, that will be handled as theft of trade secrets. But anything still only in your head and not written into our agreements belongs to you. I cannot stop you from taking that. The brightness on Su Miaoyi's face seemed to break apart. Shinzaning, you were guarding against me from the beginning, yet you still pretended to be fair. I smiled. Little sister, if a businesswoman does not guard against people, should she guard against knives falling out of the sky instead? Her voice tightened. Prince Zhao was right. What you need is what is inside my head. You have never needed me as a person. For once, I did not immediately answer by distinguishing between a business partner and a tree that grew money. Because in the beginning, what I had noticed first really was her value. Only later had I begun noticing her fear and her unwillingness to remain ordinary. At first, yes, I said, but you have never truly treated this place as somewhere you could return to either. She froze. You approached Qiheng because the book cast you in the heroine's role. You joined the Novel Inventions Office because you wanted the Shen family's resources. You met Prince Zhao because you wanted someone willing to hand you the final seal. You and I have both calculated against each other. There is no need to turn the entire old debt into one person's fault. Her face slowly turned pale. If you want to go, go. We will settle according to the contract. If you want to stay, that is also fine. Come to work tomorrow as usual. But the next time we negotiate, we will not discuss only silver. We will discuss what kind of authority you actually want. She left. She did not come the second day. She did not come the third day either. On the fourth day, Prince's household released an imitation glass lamp at half the Shen family's price. Trading houses under the Jing'an Marquis Manor guaranteed the batch. That same day, the price of salt in Jiangzhou began rising far earlier than it should have according to Su Miaoyi's book. The salt turmoil that was supposedly meant to happen next spring had been forcibly dragged into the present. Qingtang paced anxiously. Young lady, orders at the lamp workshop have fallen sharply. The salt shops in Jiangzhou are in chaos too. They say merchants are hoarding salt. Ordinary people cannot afford it, and crowds have already gone to the local offices to protest. I examined the sample lamp released by Prince Zhao's household. I removed the base and pulled out an extremely thin copper reflector. It was Su Miaoyi's improvement for increasing brightness, but she did not know that the Shin lamps also had an additional fire-resistant layer. Prince Zhao's workshop had copied too quickly. It copied the brightness but not the safety. I turned over the underside of the lamp base. There was no hidden Shen mark that appeared when exposed to fire. There was no doubt, it was an imitation. As for the salt prices, I closed my eyes briefly. Investigate the salt merchants under Prince Zhao's name. Also investigate the land deeds and bank drafts the Marquis Manor used as security for the Imperial Commerce Bureau. Qingtang stared. Young lady, you suspect the salt turmoil is connected to Prince Zhao? I tapped the lamp base lightly. He did not simply know that salt unrest would occur. He used one sentence from her to manufacture the unrest himself, then planned to use the Marquis Manor and the salt merchants to pocket all the profit. 3 days later, one of Prince Cao's lamps caused a fire in the study of an assistant minister of rights. No one was hurt, but half the study, packed with rare books, was reduced to ash. The assistant minister was furious and submitted a formal complaint, accusing Prince Zhao's household of selling unsafe lamps. Yan Cizhou was ordered to investigate. Using the concealed marks beneath the Shen lamps, the batch records, and craftsman's testimony, he established that Prince Zhao's household had secretly opened its own workshop and stolen the technique. He also found that the Jing'an Marquis Manor had used its affiliated trading houses to guarantee the imitation lamps. At the same time, the Jiangzhou salt case erupted. 3 salt shops operating under Prince Zhao's name had stockpiled salt in advance. Part of the working capital borrowed by the Marquis Manor had also flowed into Jiangzhou. In only 7 days, salt prices quadrupled. Poor families could no longer afford salt. One woman carrying her sick child knelt outside a salt shop and kowtowed repeatedly until her forehead bled. Su Miaoyi was taken to the Court of Judicial Review to give a statement. She was not a prisoner, but she still had to explain when she had mentioned the future salt unrest, whom she had told, and whether she had received any benefit from Prince Zhao's household. When I went to bring her home, she was sitting beneath the corridor. The arrogance that had made her take everything for granted was finally crushed by reality. The first thing she said when she saw me was, I only said one sentence, that there would be salt unrest in the future. I did not know he would use it to hoard salt. I looked at her. But you did tell him. Tears spilled from her eyes. I thought it was only part of the plot. In that plot, did no one fall ill and die because they could not afford salt? Her whole body went rigid. Nearby, a woman from Jiangzhou was crying as she gave testimony. Her child had suffered a high fever for days. The family could afford neither salt nor rice. Her husband had argued at a salt shop, where he was beaten and suffered a broken leg. The last trace of color left Su Miaoyi's face. At last she understood that a plot point spoken from her mouth, once used by someone with an agenda, became real suffering when it landed on real people. That night she did not light any lamps. The west courtyard was dark as a well, yet she sat beside the well with her palm open. A pinch of coarse salt lay there. The crystals were hard. They pressed against the skin of her palm, rubbed raw by the abacus like tiny white stones. I asked, "What are you looking at?" After a long time she answered, I always thought salt unrest was only one sentence in a book. Wind swept across the well. Her shoulders trembled slightly. So even one sentence can weigh heavily enough to cost someone their life. If you want to return to the Novel Inventions office, bring me the authority you want tomorrow, I said. We will rewrite the contract. She suddenly looked up. You will temporarily step down from deputy manager to trainee. Your profit share will be cut in half and reassessed. The money used to stabilize salt prices in Jiangzhou will be gradually deducted from your profit share over the next 3 years. Her tears stopped from sheer outrage. In exchange, I continued, the Shin family may not use any new method of yours that has not been written into a contract unless we have your written authorization. You will also receive veto power over projects that would harm ordinary livelihoods. Shin Jiaoning, I asked calmly. What? Do you not want to make amends? She gritted her teeth. A person willing to admit fault and bold enough to write both rights and responsibilities into a contract could still be saved. And I, too, needed to learn that not everyone could be kept merely by calculating interests correctly. The moment we returned to the Shen residence, Qi Heng arrived. He already knew that the imitation lamps guaranteed by the Marquis Manor had caused trouble, yet his first reaction was still to blame me. The instant he saw Su Miaoyi, he said, Why are you going back to her? If Shen Jiaoning had not let you go to Prince Zhao's residence, how would you have been dragged into this case? Su Miaoyi asked in return. Then why did you arrange the meeting? Why did you use the Marquis Manor as guarantor for Prince Zhao? Qi Heng could not answer. You say you love me, she continued, but you only loved me when I could help the Marquis Manor win a future and make you proud. When the imitation lamps caused disaster and the salt case broke out, the first thing you feared was still that the Marquis Manor would be implicated. Qi Heng's expression turned grim. Miaoyi, do not let Shen Jiaoning manipulate you. Su Miaoyi shook her head. She did not manipulate me. I finally learned to put sweet words and actual accounts on the same scale and calculate them together. Knowing how to calculate was a good thing. A woman who knew how to calculate was harder to deceive. Qi Heng and Su Miaoyi completely fell out. Soon the capital was full of gossip claiming that Su Miaoyi had failed to climb into Prince Zhao's household and had returned to the Shen family to become my servant. Su Miaoyi nearly exploded with anger. She grabbed a brush and began drafting an essay to curse them in. Return, I stopped her. What use is cursing? Then should I let them slander me? I placed a stack of recruitment notices for female workers in front of her. On the 15th of next month, the Shen family is opening a school for women. You will teach the first lesson. She stared at me. A school for women, literacy, bookkeeping, soap making, work records, and warehouse management. The first intake will be limited to women from our workshops and daughters of merchant households. After graduation, they may work in Shen shops as female accountants or managers. Her eyes grew brighter and brighter. You have wanted to do this for a long time, haven't you? I nodded. She suddenly became quiet. So that is why you kept making me learn accounts. For this and for yourself. She looked down at the notices. But will they listen to me? Everyone knows I made a fool of myself. I nearly helped throw Jiangzhou's salt market into chaos. A person who has fallen knows how to teach others to stand more steadily. That is more trustworthy than someone who has only ever spoken beautiful words. More than 200 applications arrived. Because the site was limited, the first class accepted only 60 students. On opening day, many women who had not been admitted still stood outside the windows to listen. There were widows, merchants' daughters, wives despised and cast aside by their husbands, and even young maidservants who had secretly come over to listen. Su Miaoyi stood at the front. At first her hands shook badly. I sat in the last row and gave her a small nod. She took a deep breath. I used to think that knowing a few new things made me better than other people. Later I learned that whether something is new does not matter. What matters is whether it can help people live better lives. The room gradually quieted. She picked up an abacus and smiled awkwardly. Today we start with bookkeeping. Remember this carefully. When someone tells you they love you, that may not be reliable. The silver recorded in your own account book is much more reliable. When someone tells you about the future, that may not be reliable either. The ledger in your own hands is still the clearest thing you possess. The whole room burst into laughter. I laughed too. At that moment, I suddenly felt that hiring a transmigrated woman to keep accounts was far more interesting than fighting her over a man. The women's school gradually became famous. When the Empress Dowager heard of it, she bestowed a plaque bearing 4 characters, Mingxuan Women's Academy. The Shen family's reputation soared. Su Miaoyi once again became a subject of conversation throughout the capital, except now fewer people cursed her and more people begged her to teach. She complained constantly about the trouble, but in truth, she wrote lessons until midnight every day. When I visited one evening, she was bent over a desk revising a literacy primer for female workers. The moment she saw me, she covered it with another sheet of paper. It is not finished yet. I am not trying to steal your credit. Her face reddened. Who is afraid of that? I sat down and noticed a small wooden plaque beside her hand. 2 characters were carved into it, meaning, Teacher Su. I raised an eyebrow. You like it that much? She answered awkwardly. It is all right. I did not expose her. But just when everything was going smoothly, an imperial summons ordered Su Miaoyi and me to enter the palace together. Because of the salt case and the imitation lamp case, Prince Zhao's had lost part of his stipend and been stripped of authority over the Imperial Commerce Bureau. Still, he had not given up. He submitted a memorial accusing the Shenan family of using the women's school as a way to gather people and make money, while encouraging women to abandon the proper duties of wives. Several senior ministers in court echoed his accusation in the Great Hall. Prince Zhao said coldly, women should assist their husbands and teach their children. Yet the Shen woman teaches them to show themselves in public, conduct business, and keep accounts. If this continues, will it not overturn the proper order? Su Miaoyi was so angry she was about to speak. I held her hand down in such a situation. Shouting about equality between men and women would only give our opponents an easy opening to attack us. I stepped forward and knelt. Your Majesty, I would never dare disrupt the proper order, but Great Lung has endured years of warfare. Many able-bodied men have gone to the front, leaving no one at home to manage fields and shops. If women can read and keep accounts, they can preserve family property, pay taxes, and support the old and the young. That does not destroy families, it stabilizes them. The emperor said nothing. I continued. If your Majesty doubts this, you may inspect the Shen workshops. This year, female accountants trained by Mingxuan Women's Academy have helped 27 military families preserve their land deeds. helped 13 widowed households recover unpaid debts, and assisted the authorities in collecting an additional 1,400 taels in taxes. At the word taxes, the emperor finally raised his eyes. Prince Zhao's expression changed slightly. The emperor's gaze remained calm, but it lingered on Prince Zhao a little longer. Yan Cizhou later told me, His Majesty did not necessarily believe you. He simply no longer completely believed Prince Zhao. At that very moment, Yan Cizhou stepped out of the officials' ranks and presented the audited accounts. I have verified the records. Miss Shen's statements are true. Then the Empress Dowager's senior attendant escorted a woman in an old padded coat into the hall. She was the widow of a frontier soldier. After her husband died in service, his paternal uncles in the clan had tried to seize her land. A female accountant from Mingxuan Women's Academy had found the old deed and helped her recover it. The widow knelt in the center of the hall. Her voice trembled, but every word was clear. If a woman knowing how to read and keep accounts is called a disruption of proper order, then I am willing to disrupt that order just this once. I do not understand grand principles. I only know that without the Shin family's women's school, my child and I would have been driven from our home long ago. The hall fell utterly silent. After reviewing the accounts, the emperor said, plainly, those who know how to pay taxes are law-abiding subjects. Those who can preserve their families support good governance. Prince Zhao tried to speak again, but the emperor raised a hand. Mingxuan Women's Academy may remain open, but it must register with the Ministry of Revenue. It may teach literacy, bookkeeping, and contracts. It may not discuss court politics, shelter runaway servants, or set up household registrations on its own. I kowtowed in thanks. That was enough. Walking in chains was still better than kneeling forever. On the way out of the palace, Su Miaoyi let out a long breath of relief. Just now, I nearly cursed their backward feudal customs. Fortunately, you did not, she said quietly. I know. Winning with insults does not get anything done. She truly had grown. After Mingxuan Women's Academy received official approval and registration from the Ministry of Revenue, merchant families from many regions began sending daughters to the capital to apply. The Shen family's businesses expanded along with it. Su Miaoyi became so busy that her feet barely touched the ground. She no longer had time to think about Qiheng. Qiheng, however, began to regret everything. He started coming frequently to the Shen residence. At first he came looking for Su Miaoyi. Later, somehow he began looking for me. John and I have thought a great deal lately. He stood before the Cheyenne gate looking worn. I was foolish before. I mistook novelty for true feeling. I looked at him. Has young Lord Qi finished speaking? He paused. Do you really feel nothing at all? I thought seriously for a moment. Something. Hope immediately flared in his eyes. I said, your carriage is blocking the delivery carts from my shop. Qiheng's face went gray. At that moment, Su Miaoyi came out from inside carrying account books. A ring of warehouse keys hung from her waist. The keys jingled as she walked. They were not jade ornaments or love tokens, yet to Qiheng, they seemed more painful to look at than any engagement gift, because they meant she had doors of her own to open, accounts of her own to manage, and places of her own to go. She no longer needed to wait for him to come collect her. Qiheng said softly, Miaoyi, you do not want to see me either? Su Miaoyi looked at her books, then at him. I have to inspect the South City warehouse today. I do not have time. Qiheng smiled bitterly. Is there nothing but silver in your eyes now? Su Miaoyi corrected him. There are also work schedules, inventory, labor, and taxes. I could not help laughing. Qiheng looked at the two of us as though he no longer recognized either woman before him. Once he had complained that I was too proper and loved Su Miaoyi for being free-spirited. Now I no longer revolved around him. Su Miaoyi no longer treated him as the center of her life either. Only then did he begin to panic. But no woman in this world remained forever in the same place waiting for a man to turn around. After Qiheng left, Su Miaoyi asked me, are you really not sad at all? Why? I looked at the delivery carts and female workers moving back and forth along the street. Because I have more important things to do. She was quiet for a moment before saying softly, so do I. At the end of the year, the emperor summoned me. He asked whether I would be willing to lead the female accountants of Mingxuan Women's Academy into the palace for half a year to assist with reforming procurement and warehouse management for the imperial storehouses. The entire hall went silent. It was both an honor and a restraint. Once I entered the palace walls, I would no longer be free to manage the Shen shops and banking houses as I wished. Everyone looked at me. Qiheng was also present. Perhaps he finally understood that I had never reached this point because someone wanted to marry me. Su Miaoyi stood behind me, so nervous that her fingertips had turned white. I knelt and kowtowed. I do not dare shoulder such a responsibility alone. Mingxuan Women's Academy already has several female accountants highly skilled in warehouse management. If your majesty permits, they may be selected through examination to serve on trial in the imperial storehouses. I am willing to remain outside the palace and audit the old records for them. The emperor asked, "You do not wish to remain in the palace?" "My ambition does not lie within palace walls." Someone in the hall drew in a sharp breath. "I only hope to help Great Lang open a few more shops, build a few more workshops, and teach a few more women to read and calculate their own accounts. The palace needs people who can guard its storehouses. But the streets and markets also need people who know how to guard their own silver." The emperor studied me for a long time. In the end, he approved the female accountants from the academy for trial service in the imperial storehouses, and also granted me permission to enter the palace once each month to review the accounts. The matter was settled. After leaving the palace, Su Miaoyi hurried after me. "That was a post in the imperial storehouses, serving directly under the emperor. If you had stayed, who would ever dare look down on you again?" I looked at her. "Do you want that?" She quickly shook her head. "No." "Then why should I trade an entire road of business for one accounting position inside palace walls?" She froze. Once Su Miaoyi had believed that if a woman wanted to prove herself, she had to stand at the highest point where everyone would look up at her. Only later did she realize that accounting offices, workshops, schools, and trade routes all gave people places to stand. Standing high or low was one thing, whether the road beneath one's feet belonged to oneself was another. I had understood that from the beginning. The honor of the imperial storehouse was not a bad thing for me, but it was not the road I wanted. What I wanted had never been a key bestowed by someone else. When Yan Cizhou came to see me, he brought a jar of wine. "Congratulations, Miss Shen, on turning down immense wealth and honor." Did the deputy minister come to laugh at me? No, he looked at me. "I came to ask what Miss Shen plans to do next." I considered it for a moment. "Open a banking house." Yan Cizhou nearly choked on his wine. I explained seriously. "Women who earn wages need a place to save them. Merchants need somewhere to circulate working capital. Military families who receive stipends need someone to help safeguard the money. If the Shen banking house succeeds, Mingxuan Women's Academy will truly have a foundation beneath it." Yan Cizhou lowered his eyes to a sample deposit slip, prepared for the female workers. His fingertip rested for a long time on the serial number field. I asked, "What is it?" He smiled faintly. "If my mother had been able to read when I was young, she would not have been deceived by a paternal uncle in the clan and lost half a mu of land." He said it quietly, as though merely mentioning something in seething. But suddenly, I understood that he was willing to help me for reasons that were not entirely about me. There were too many people in this world swallowed by account books they could not read. He had once been one of them. Yan Cizhou asked, "Have you considered that doing this will offend many people?" "Do I currently offend too few?" he said. "I can help you investigate who is watching the Shen accounts, but I cannot help you conceal every risk. If the banking house truly commits wrongdoing, I will investigate it as usual." I looked at him, "And if one day your case leads to the Shen family, I will verify the facts first, then take them to court." He did not promise to protect me. He did not promise favoritism. "What I can protect is the evidence from being secretly switched," he said. "I cannot guarantee that the Shen family will never make a mistake." I nodded. "That is enough." He was responsible for dragging hidden blades into the light. I was responsible for making sure the Shen accounts could withstand those blades. I joked. "Does that count as contributing capital, Deputy Minister?" He thought for a moment. "If Miss Shen is willing, perhaps it can be considered an advance on my betrothal gifts." The wine cup in my hand trembled slightly. He smiled with perfect calm, except that the tips of his ears had turned red. I suddenly remembered the first day I met him, holding a book upside down while insisting he had only happened to pass by. So some people had never merely been passing by. They simply walked very slowly, waiting until I had time to turn around and notice them. When construction of the Shen banking house began, Su Miaoyi was more excited than anyone. She proposed deposit slips, interest payments, and transaction records. She insisted that every female worker's deposit slip carry a serial number, and that the depositor keep it in order to withdraw wages later. Besides the general ledger, every shop's subsidiary book, each warehouse's raw material register, and every tax receipt had to be stored separately. Every 10 pages would carry a private verification code known only to the accountant and shop manager. My eyes lit up as I listened. I wrote all of it into the banking house regulations, then made 2 copies, one to be kept in the general ledger room, and the other sealed and stored in the South City archive. Su Miaoyi immediately became alert. "This time I want 20%. I nodded. "Agreed." She stared. "That easily?" "The idea is worth it, Because it is new? No, because if the general ledger has a problem, the subsidiary books can still cross-check one another. She pressed a hand to her chest. Oh no, I am almost moved again. Uncle Zhou in the general ledger room looked down on the entire arrangement. He had kept accounts for the Shen family for 20 years, and father had always trusted him. When he heard that a group of young female accountants wanted to add verification codes to the old books, he said only that they were creating unnecessary complications. Su Miaoyi argued with him on the spot for half a day. In the end, the verification codes were shared only with the shop managers and accountants at each shop. The central ledger room still received only consolidated totals. At the time, I thought it was merely a dispute between old and new accounting methods. I did not pay attention to the way Uncle Zhou looked at her. On the day the banking house opened, the first depositor was a woman from the soap workshop. Uncle Zhou personally received her 30 copper coins and, according to the new rules, issued the first numbered deposit slip. She had deposited only 30 coins, yet she tucked the slip carefully against herself and began to cry. This is the first money I have ever had that was truly mine. Behind the counter, Su Miaoyi's eyes reddened too. I saw her turn away to wipe them and pretended not to notice that night she came to find me. Shenjiaoning, yes? Was I really very annoying before? I looked at her. Do you want the truth? She took a deep breath. Never mind, I laughed. She laughed too. After a while she said softly, thank you for not treating me like some monster to be burned, and for not driving me away. I was quiet before answering. At the beginning I really did only want to use you. I know. She nodded. But while using me, you also gave me a road I could live on. Between people, sincerity does not always have to exist from the first moment. Sometimes, if the accounts are settled clearly first, a little sincerity can grow afterward. The commercial tax case erupted 2 full years earlier than the 3 years later. Su Miaoyi had once described before dawn, officials from the Ministry of Revenue and the capital prefecture surrounded the Shen banking house. The charges were illegal high-interest lending, inducing women to deposit money, and embezzling commercial taxes. Although Prince Zhao had already lost control of the Imperial Commerce Bureau, old banking houses operating under his name and several officials in the Ministry of Revenue could still submit accusations. Most dangerously, Uncle Zhou, who managed the Shen General Ledger Room, had disappeared. He took 3 genuine account books that were supposed to be submitted to the Ministry of Revenue for inspection, and left 3 altered false ledgers in the archive, changing the figures for interest and taxes. Qingtang staggered into the room. Young lady, the ledger warehouse in the East Courtyard is on fire. Someone also set fire to the South City copy archive. The female workers discovered it early, but half of the records there were still lost. Flames rose from the East Courtyard and cast red light over half the wall. Burned scraps of paper drifted down like black snow and landed in Qingtang's hair. She had been crying as she beat at the flames with her sleeve, leaving a scorched hole in the fabric. When I rushed over, my first reaction was not to call for people to fight the fire. I thought of more than a year of new records. Goods moving through 6 prefectures, the deposits of hundreds of female workers, and the stipends of military families, all tied to pages that now might be impossible to distinguish as genuine or false. And half of the subsidiary records that could cross-check the general ledger were now in the flames. For the first time, I could not hold my abacus steady. The jade abacus mother had given me slipped from my sleeve and fell onto the bluestone floor. The cracking sound was faint, but it seemed to strike straight through my bones. I stared at the crack and remembered the line in my confidential risk ledger, "The Shen family collapses." At that moment I was truly afraid. Afraid that I had calculated every human motive and still failed to protect the ship carrying all these people. This time, Prince Zhao was no longer probing. He wanted the Shen family destroyed. Yan Cizhou was suspended from his post as well, on the grounds that his association with the Shen family had become too close for him to investigate the case impartially. He stood outside the Court of Judicial Review holding his official hat, a pale layer of early frost on his hair. I asked, "Do you regret it?" "Yes." My heart sank. He continued slowly, "If I had known, I should have charged Miss Shen a consulting fee in advance." Somehow he managed to lighten half the weight in my chest. Yan Cizhou looked toward the Shen residence. His voice grew grave. "Shenjiaoning, if the books are gone, only witnesses remain." I understood. Witnesses could be bought, threatened with blades, or persuaded to betray someone. Su Miaoyi stood behind me. "It happens the same way in the book. Uncle Zhou, the keeper of the ledgers, takes the original ledgers away. The archive burns. The Shen family loses the evidence needed to cross-check the accounts. I turned to her. Then what happens? She answered. In the original story, I testify in court that the Shen family enticed me into making inventions for profit. Then Prince Zhao produces the 3 false ledgers Uncle Zhou left behind. The Shen family has no way to defend itself. Qingtang drew in a sharp breath. But Su Miaoyi raised her head, her eyes red. I will not do that. I looked at her for a long time. Then what will you do? For supporting Panda. She looked toward the half-burned pile of subsidiary ledgers rescued from the South City Archive. Your support helps us bring you more amazing stories. Now, we created serial numbers, verification codes, and 3-way cross-checks from the beginning. We do not have to rely on my memory alone. Uncle Zhou took the genuine general ledgers, but each shop still has its subsidiary books. Half the South City copies survive. And he cannot possibly steal every deposit slip already held by the female workers. I slowly smiled. Accountant, the Shen family has been supporting you for so long. It is finally time for you to be useful. She glared at me, but tears spilled from her eyes. You are not deducting my profit share for this, are you? If the Shen family survives, I will give you a bonus. She wiped her tears and led people into the newly extinguished archive. That night, every female accountant from Mingxuan Women's Academy who had ever managed subsidiary records for the Shen banking house came to help. They were not relying on loyalty alone. Each woman held a piece of evidence she had personally managed. Some carried subsidiary ledgers in their arms. Some had bundles of deposit slips strapped to their backs. Some had both hands stained with ink and still kept working their abacuses. The Shen front hall filled with women. The clatter of abacus beads filled the hall, dense as rain striking green-tiled roofs. Su Miaoyi ordered everyone to sort the subsidiary ledgers first by shop, then arrange deposit slips by date, then use the verification code every 10 pages to test whether pages were genuine. Where a page was missing, they cross-checked 4 other sources: workshop delivery slips, warehouse raw material records, tax receipts, and customer deposit slips. One discrepancy of 37 taels would not balance no matter how they calculated it. They traced it to an AIOU for raw oil from the South City soap workshop, found the delivery porter who had handled the shipment and brought him in as a witness, and finally restored the missing link in the chain of accounts. By dawn, Su Miaoyi finally raised her head. Her eyes were red from staying awake all night, yet she was smiling. The accounts are back. All 3 ledgers Uncle Zhou had left behind were false. On the day of the joint hearing by the 3 judicial offices, the Minister of Revenue, officials from the Court of Judicial Review, and the censorate sat in the upper seats. Prince Zhao sat to the right awaiting examination. He was required to explain the movement of funds among his former banking houses, the Marquis Manors trading houses, and the Jiangzhou salt businesses. Uncle Zhou knelt in court and insisted that the Shen family had illegally charged ruinous interest, forced women to sign contracts binding them into servitude, and that the books he had carried away were the genuine records. The Minister of Revenue asked, "Miss Shen, your archive burned. The books presented for inspection are in Uncle Zhou's hands. What proves that these newly reconstructed records were not fabricated afterward?" Before I could speak, Su Miaoyi stepped forward. She wore narrow-sleeved blue clothing, with an abacus at her waist. Her face was pale, but her back was straight. Prince Zhao looked at her. "Missa, months ago, if the Shen family had not tied you down with contracts, you could already have been managing the Imperial Commerce Bureau. Why stand here and take blame for them now?" Su Miaoyi smiled. "Your Highness is mistaken. Without the Shen family, I fear I would have been held up by you as an auspicious omen, squeezed for every idea in my head, and discarded once I had nothing left." The entire courtroom went still. Prince Zhao's face darkened. Su Miaoyi presented the reconstructed general ledger together with each shop's original subsidiary books and the surviving deposit slips. Names, dates, interest, and tax payments could all be traced backward through 4 independent sources of evidence. The 3 ledgers Uncle Zhou left behind had altered figures, but they could not reproduce the numbered deposit slips that had already been issued to female workers long before the fire, nor could they reconcile with official tax receipts. Uncle Zhou went white. "Nonsense," Su Miaoyi replied. "When you forged the books, you did not know that the shop managers and I had agreed on verification codes. You also did not know that even one tiny deposit slip worth 30 copper coins could become evidence." Although Yan Cizhou had been suspended to avoid a conflict of interest, he appeared in court as a witness. What he had investigated earlier was not the Shen accounts themselves, but the movement of bank drafts between Uncle Zhou, an advisor from Prince Zhao's household, and trading houses tied to the Marquis Manor. He presented the counterfoil for a 5,000 tael draft Uncle Zhou had received, along with a secret letter from Prince Zhao's advisor. Immediately afterward, the censorate submitted testimony from the arsonist. The man had been recognized by female night watch workers. The bank draft he had received came from the same banking house as Uncle Zhou's 5,000 tael draft, and even belonged to the same consecutive series. A single secret letter would have proved only that the parties had been in contact. The reconstructed accounts proved that Uncle Zhou had forged the ledgers. The bank draft counterfoil and the arsonist's testimony then connected the false books, the fire, and Prince Zhao's household into one complete chain of evidence. Yan Cizhou said, Uncle Zhou stole the genuine ledgers and manufactured a commercial tax case. Prince Zhao's household bribed the keeper of the books and arranged the fires. The Jing'an Marquis Manor used its estates and trading houses to guarantee Prince Zhao's imitation lamps and salt speculation. Witnesses, physical evidence, and the movement of funds are all complete. I respectfully ask the 3 judicial offices to verify them. Prince Zhao abruptly rose. You dare slander an imperial prince based on one letter and several bank drafts? The presiding officials did not argue with him. They simply ordered every item checked one after another: the drafts, the secret letter, the subsidiary ledgers, and the arsonist's testimony. The first person to break was Prince Zhao's own advisor. When he saw that the date Uncle Zhou received the money matched exactly the date recorded for his own withdrawal of the bank draft, he changed his testimony in open court. The emperor did not personally attend the hearing and did not declare anyone guilty in advance. Before the trial began, only one oral order came from the throne. Whether imperial relative or merchant, follow the evidence wherever it leads and deal with whoever it implicates accordingly. When Prince Zhao heard his advisor confess, his face finally changed. The 3 judicial offices then summoned female workers holding original deposit slips, military dependents, and widows. Those small scattered pieces of paper matched the reconstructed general ledger one after another and also matched the tax amounts received by the Ministry of Revenue. The Minister of Revenue asked, "These records were reconstructed by women?" Su Miaoyi kowtowed. Not by me alone. 47 female accountants from Mingxuan Women's Academy and the managers of the individual shops reconstructed them together. The courtroom remained silent for a long time. No auspicious omen had fallen from the sky. No beautiful phrase had the power to decide who lived and who died. There were only account books that could survive verification. Prince Zhao was stripped of the right to use his princely seal and confined pending further judgment. Uncle Zhou and the advisors involved were taken into custody one after another. The case file was submitted to the throne for final review. Half a month later, the commercial tax case was formally overturned. The investigation confirmed that Prince Zhao had colluded with several old banking houses and attempted to use the tax inspection to seize the Shen banking business, then planned to use false debt contracts to appropriate deposits belonging to female workers and military families. The Jing'an Marquis Manor, meanwhile, had used its estates and trading houses to guarantee Prince Zhao's imitation lamp business and salt speculation. When we walked out of the court, Su Miaoyi looked as though all her strength had been drained away. She sat on the stone steps, covered her face, and began to cry. I did not comfort her. After a long time, she asked hoarsely, "Shenjianing, was my book fake?" I looked at the sky beyond the palace walls. Not necessarily. Perhaps someone only wrote down the things they wanted you to see. She cried even harder. I almost helped them get everyone killed. I sat down beside her. Then use your head when you read in the future. She cursed me through her tears. You are still lecturing me now? I handed her a handkerchief. Habit. She took it. After a while she said, I do not want to be the protagonist anymore. Then what do you want to be? She thought for a long time and answered through quiet sobs. I want to be accountants. I want my own house, my own accounting room, my own students. One day I want to return to Jiangzhou. Even if my mother no longer recognizes me, I want her to know that her daughter is living well. That is harder than being the protagonist, I said. She raised her head. But it is worth more. At last she laughed through her tears. Qi Heng's ending was worse than I expected, though he could not be called innocent. The Jing'an Marquis Manor had repeatedly stood guarantor for the Imperial Commerce Bureau and for Prince Zhao's imitation lamp and salt ventures. It had also concealed the suspicious loan that had started the entire chain. The Marquis was removed from office pending investigation, and Qi Heng lost his status as heir. All the family's assets were used to compensate the merchants who had suffered losses. When Qi Heng came to the Shen residence, he was still wearing his old brocade robe, but none of his former confidence remained in his eyes. Jianing. The Marquis Manor is in great difficulty now. Could I find work with the Shen family? I am willing to begin again from the bottom. I looked at him for a long time. In the past, perhaps I would have softened. Now I only found the turns of fate interesting. Years ago, he had called me calculating and said Su Miaoyi was unlike ordinary women. Now Su Miaoyi had become an accountant, while he had come to the Shen family asking for employment. The Shen workshops do not support idle people, I said. If you truly want to enter, first go to the accounting office and take the abacus test. Embarrassment appeared on Qiheng's face. Are you humiliating me? No, those are the Shen family's rules. Su Miaoyi began by learning the abacus too. At that moment, Su Miaoyi came out from inside, with keys and an account pouch hanging at her waist. Hearing us, she immediately said, "That is true, Madame Zhao scolded me until I cried 3 times. If young Master Qi wants to apply, I can lend you my old abacus." She looked at her. Miaoyi, you have changed too. Su Miaoyi rolled her eyes. Obviously, who earns money and does not change? I laughed so hard I could barely stop. In the end, Qiheng still did not enter a Shen workshop. I heard that he later became a clerk in a small grain shop, dealing every day with grain measures and tax receipts. At last he learned that account books would not calculate themselves correctly, simply because he sat staring blankly into space. He also learned that women would not stand in the same place forever waiting for him to turn back. My marriage to Yan Cizhou was arranged that same year. On the day he brought the betrothal gifts, he did not bring gold, silver, or jewels. He brought 3 blank accounting ledgers bound according to the Shen family's new bookkeeping method. He also brought copies of commercial cases he had personally compiled from public court records. Mother stared at the 3 blank ledgers for a long time before asking me, "Are you certain you want to marry this man?" I looked at Yan Cizhou. The tips of his ears were slightly red, but he still maintained a calm expression. "Madam Shen, please be at ease," he said. "After marriage, Miss Shen will be responsible for keeping money moving, and I will be responsible for making anyone who reaches for money that is not theirs return every last amount." Mother immediately agreed to the marriage. 3 years later, the Shen's family's river transport routes had taken shape, and trade routes across 6 prefectures were linked into one network. Mingswan Women's Academy had opened 12 branches. Shen's banking houses also operated across all 6 prefectures. Su Miaoyi became the youngest female accountant in Great Liang. Whenever she went out, a group of female accountants followed behind her, and her presence was more imposing than that of many officials. Some people still accused her of defying traditional order. She would only smile and ask, "Does your shop need a working capital loan?" The other party would immediately fall silent. Even old ministers who had once stood in court condemning the Women's Academy for disrupting proper order secretly sent stewards to request admission, saying their granddaughters were clever and wanted to learn accounting. Su Miaoyi personally handed out the registration tokens with an extremely gentle smile. "Line up first. Everyone is equal on the day Yan Cizhou and I married." She drank too much wine and cried while hugging my betrothal gift inventory. "Shen Zoning, do you know something? When I first came here, I truly thought you were the vicious supporting character." I raised an eyebrow. "And now?" she sobbed. "Now I think you are a black-hearted boss. I do not know what to say anymore." Yan Cizhou stood beside us laughing so hard, his shoulders shook. I handed Su Miaoyi a new contract. She immediately sobered up. "It is your wedding day and you are still making me sign a contract?" "Yes. There is a kind of shell from the South Sea that can be ground into pearl powder." "Did you not say it could be used to make face cream?" "The new shop gives you 30%. She stared at the words 30%. Her tears vanished instantly. "Where is the brush?" King Tong sighed. "Accountant Su, you did not even put up a token protest." After pressing her thumbprint onto the contract, Su Miaoyi lifted her chin proudly. "Why struggle? Men change their hearts, silver does not." I looked at her. She looked at me, then both of us laughed. Later, people often asked me whether my life would have been different if Qiheng had not broken our engagement that year, or if Su Miaoyi had never come to the capital. Perhaps it would have been different, but not necessarily better. I did not remain in the imperial storehouses, nor was I trapped behind palace walls. I had shops, account books, trade routes, and a women's academy. I had a husband willing to examine records with me late into the night. And I had a friend from another world who had once wanted to take my man, and now helped me make money every day. People often said women were only good at calculating petty debts. But if you could not even settle the small accounts clearly, then someone else would end up calculating your fate for you. We had simply gone back one entry at a time and settled what others had taken from us. A boat glided along the river, its sail snapping in the wind. Su Miaoyi stood at the bow and turned back to shout at me. "Shenjoning, where are we going next?" I opened my account book. Somewhere we can make money." She laughed loudly. I laughed too. There were countless storms in this world, but once a woman held the tiller in her own hands, she no longer needed to wait for someone else to ferry her across the river. Thank you for supporting Panda. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps us bring you more amazing stories. Now, let's begin story 2. When my adoptive mother brought me to the Marquis household, she repeated the same warning until her mouth nearly went dry. The Marchioness is one of the foremost noble ladies in the capital, and before the Marquis gave up scholarship for the military, he was a scholar himself. Rein in that temper of yours. Absolutely do not bring any sabers, spears, or other weapons with you. So I spent 3 whole months in the Marquis household pretending to be a gentle young lady. Then one night I woke up to use the latrine and suddenly smelled a very unusual aroma. The Marchioness had hitched up her skirt and squatted with the bold posture of a general. Holding a roasted goat leg in both hands, she began tearing bites from it. Tell me, why is our biological daughter so quiet? She's nothing like either of us. The Marquis casually tossed several volumes of the classics into the fire. How is she nothing like us? That obsession with books is exactly like me when I was young. The girl who had been raised in my place sat with one ankle resting over the opposite knee in a figure 4 pose, looking thoroughly exasperated. Father, mother, if you're going to put on an act, at least make it convincing. Hide all the sabers and spears in your rooms. Don't frighten my little sister. I suspected I was having a nightmare. Otherwise, how could I possibly have stumbled upon such a bizarre scene? My mother, famed as the foremost noble lady in the capital, was clutching a goat leg in both hands and tearing into it with a fierce expression. My father was known as the military commander who loved books more than anyone. Even while away on campaign, people said, he would study the classics whenever he had a spare moment, reading until he lost all sense of day and night. Yet here he was, throwing one classic after another into the fire as kindling. And then there was my supposedly gentle, virtuous older sister, who had long been engaged to the third prince. She had abandoned all concern for appearances and let out a loud burp. Bring 30 more skewers. This little bit of goat isn't even enough to fill the gaps between my teeth. I stood rooted to the spot. Then I raised a hand and pinched my arm hard. Smack! My arm did not hurt, but a blow landed on the back of my head. My vision went black. When I woke again, I was lying on my carved wooden bed. So it really had only been a dream, right? Still shaken, I patted my chest. Hearing movement, the maid waiting outside quickly carried in a basin of water. My lady, did you strain your neck? I looked in the mirror. My neck really was tilted to one side and even a light touch sent a dull ache through it. I really must have strained my neck. The maid applied a warm compress and massaged it for a while. When I finally went out, my older sister, Cui Mingshu, was already waiting outside. She wore a pale blue dress and looked as lovely as a fairy from a painting. Tilting her head slightly, she gave me a shy smile. Let's go, little sister. Her voice was soft and sweet, nothing like the smoky, hoarse voice I had heard in last night's dream. I steadied myself and pushed that strange dream out of my mind. Mingshu had long been engaged to the third prince. The Marquis and Marchioness could not bear to leave me outside the family any longer, so the two households discussed it, and announced that I was the second young lady of the Kui family, who had supposedly been recovering from illness at a countryside estate all along. Once every month, Mingshu and I would return together to visit the other set of parents. My adoptive father was a hunter. My adoptive mother butchered pigs for a living. Mingshu went to drink tea with her biological father. While no one was paying attention, my adoptive mother winked at me. You haven't given yourself away, have you? Don't worry. I patted her hand, then hurriedly asked, where are my treasures? Relax. I hid them all in the courtyard. My treasures were the pig butchering knife I had picked during a traditional fortune-telling object-choosing ceremony, and the bow my adoptive father had given me when I came of age. When I first returned to the Marquis household, the thing I found hardest to leave behind was my adoptive parents. The second hardest was this collection of treasures. But after my adoptive mother went out to ask around about the Kuei family, she came back with a dark expression. Your birth parents are both scholarly people, and the daughter they raised grew into a clever, well-mannered young lady. Tone yourself down. You absolutely cannot take these things with you. She even hired someone specially to teach me the manners expected of a noble young lady. After half a month of stumbling through lessons, I barely managed to graduate. But changing a person's nature was harder than changing mountains and rivers. After 3 months of pretending to be a refined lady in the Marquis household, I was truly reaching my limit. My adoptive mother jerked her chin. Your father and I will keep Mingshu occupied. Go have some fun. My hands had been itching for something real to do. I rolled up my sleeves, dragged a pig out of the pen, swiftly dealt with it and butchered it. After one miserable squeal from outside, Mingshu looked thoughtfully toward the window. I think I heard something. Where is Mingzheng? My adoptive mother laughed heartily and changed the subject. That girl has loved books since she was little. She found a travelogue just now and is reading it in her room. Mingshu, how have you been this month? And that third prince you're engaged to, do you truly like him? After spending the whole day with my adoptive parents, I hugged my knife for a long time before reluctantly putting it away. The moment I climbed into the carriage, Mingshu stared fixedly at me. Is something wrong? I had been so careful. Had I still exposed myself? Instead, Mingshu took a handkerchief from inside her robe. Wipe your face. You only read a travelogue. How did you manage to work up so much sweat? The handkerchief was embroidered with orchids and still carried a faint, pleasant trace of Mingshu's fragrance. Back at the Marquis household, the Marchioness had just finished stewing soup and was waiting for us with the Marquis. She ladled the soup with graceful composure. The Marquis drank while keeping his eyes on a military treatise in his hand. I looked left, then right, and finally breathed a sigh of relief. Of course. Last night had only been a dream, right? As soon as I finished my soup and left, the other three exhaled in unison. The Marchioness fiercely pinched the Marquis. I told you to be careful. Mingzheng saw us. She's such a delicate, gentle child. What if we frightened her? Mingshu fished the large marrow bone out of her bowl and gnawed on it, her words muffled because her mouth was full. I think little sister really was frightened. She was dazed all day and even broke into a cold sweat. Whenever our eyes met, she immediately looked away. The Marquis tossed his military treatise onto the table, exposing the storybook hidden inside it. It wasn't as if I wanted that to happen either. The room fell silent for a moment. Then the Marquis raised a trembling hand. There's still half a goat left. What are we going to do with it? Perhaps I had been too tired during the day. That night I slept wonderfully. I dreamed of the Marquis, the Marchioness, my adoptive parents, and Mingshu. All of us, one big family, lived together happily and in harmony. The next day was the Empress's flower viewing banquet. It was called a flower viewing banquet, but very few people actually cared about the flowers. Early that morning, the third prince had someone deliver a letter to Mingshu. She merely glanced at it, put it into a brocade box, and showed no reaction at all. Normally, I only had to pretend to be a proper young lady inside the Marquis household. Having to perform in front of this many people made me a little nervous. Don't be afraid, just stay with me. Mingshu lightly hooked a finger into my palm. Whether in standing, appearance, or marriage prospects, she ranked among the finest young ladies in the capital. The moment she sat down, several noble ladies gathered around her. Someone leaned over and whispered a few words in her ear. Mingshu made an excuse and left first. As soon as she was gone, everyone's curious gazes landed on me. So this is the second young lady of the Kui family. I felt as if I were sitting on needles. Before long, I made an excuse of my own and slipped away. I had only meant to walk around for a while. Instead, I accidentally found Mingshu and the third prince in a small bamboo grove. They gazed at each other with overflowing affection. The third prince gave her his jade pendant, and Mingshu returned the gesture with a scented sachet she had just finished embroidering. They looked deeply reluctant to part. Then Mingshu turned away, immediately rolled her eyes and silently mouthed a curse. Idiot. Across from her, the third prince also dropped his smile. His lips moved soundlessly. Hypocrite. I froze where I stood. I had been about to go over and greet Mingshu. I never expected to witness something like this instead. Did everyone in the capital know how to change faces at will? Having stumbled onto such a huge secret, I hid behind several bamboo stalks and decided to wait until everyone had left before getting up. Cough, cough, cough. A cough suddenly sounded behind me. Mingshu seemed to notice something and turned toward us. My pupils contracted. I hurriedly gestured at the person behind me. Shh! When no more sound followed, Mingshu finally left. Not long afterward, the third prince's attendants also disappeared. Only then did I breathe a sigh of relief. The person behind me seemed unable to hold it back any longer. He raised a fist to his mouth and coughed again. Now I finally had time to look at him. He sat in a wheelchair and wore a moon-white brocade robe. He was probably another young nobleman attending the flower banquet. His face was handsome, but his health seemed poor. His intermittent coughing had flushed his cheeks, making his lips look even paler. One wheel appeared to be caught between stones. He pushed hard, but the chair would not move. I stepped forward and pushed him out of the uneven grass and stones onto flatter ground. Thank you, miss. The flower banquet is over there. This place is secluded. Where is your servant? The sickly young man had just opened his mouth when I remembered something my adoptive mother often told me. Just consider me nosy. You don't have to tell me. My mother always says that the more secrets a person knows, the harder it is to live peacefully. A familiar figure appeared ahead. It was the maid I had left behind. If I stayed missing much longer, she would probably panic. I took a few steps toward her, then suddenly turned back. You saw what happened just now, didn't you? Mingxu was a famous noble lady in the capital. It was possible for someone to have heard her name without knowing her face. The third prince was different. His Majesty was considering making the third prince, Xiaojun, crown prince. The sickly young man nodded. I offered him a tactful warning. Let heaven and earth be the only witnesses. In a little while, I'll eat 100 flowers pastry and forget everything. You should also pretend you never saw a thing. Then I called to my maid. Limo, I'm here. Mingxu still had not returned. According to Limo, as soon as she went back to the banquet, the empress summoned her. As for me, no matter where I sat, young lords and ladies kept appearing to strike up idle chatter. Every conversation began with exactly the same sentence. So you're the second young lady Kui? I heard it so many times my ears were practically growing calluses. Her Majesty the Empress has arrived. The shout rang out and everyone rose. I had been standing beside a pavilion, but the crowd squeezed me straight toward the front. Where is Her Majesty? Someone stood on tiptoe to look. Then I suddenly felt a ticklish sensation at the back of my waist. I turned around. The first thing I saw was the enormous peony stuck in the other girl's hair, bright enough to dazzle me. She shoved me again. I did not move an inch. I merely felt another tickle at my waist. What a joke. Even a pig could not knock me over. Was I really going to be sent flying by one young lady? So when she tried again, I quickly stepped aside and generously gave her all the space she wanted. Cui Mingxu, go die. She could not pull back in time. She staggered forward and plunged straight into the lake. When the empress arrived, Miss Zhao had just been hauled out of the water. Someone had draped a garment around her. Her hair was disheveled, and she looked utterly miserable. The huge peony floated alone in the lake. Without even raising her head, Miss Zhao started pointing fingers. Your Majesty, please give me justice. It was Miss Kui. Cui Mingxu pushed me into the water and humiliated me in front of everyone. Mingxu, who was walking beside the empress, stared blankly. Me? This 100 Flowers banquet was also the first time I had formally appeared before the capital's noble society. The Marchioness had made one outfit for me and another for Mingxu. Their colors were quite similar. I also wore at my waist the scented sachet Mingxu had given me. So when the crowd squeezed together, Miss Zhao had mistaken me for Mingxu. She had meant to make Mingxu disgrace herself in front of the empress. If it wasn't you, who else could it have been? Brother Zhen and I grew up together as childhood sweethearts. I already gave him up to you. You're going to become the third prince's consort, so why do you still want to hurt me? Miss Zhao squeezed out 2 crocodile tears. When she finally raised her face, she put on a pitiful, tear-streaked expression, like pear blossoms in rain. Then she saw Mingxu standing beside the empress, and went completely still. Rigidly, Miss Zhao turned her head and saw me. Why is it you? I tilted my head and gave her a friendly smile. Good thing it was me. If the person Miss Zhao pushed really had been Mingxu, perhaps she would have succeeded. Guards, no one present was a fool. The empress had certainly not secured her position by relying on something as illusory as romantic love. Drag Zhao Shui away. Then she gently patted Mingxu's hand as if comforting her. I glanced past the empress and saw the familiar sickly young man sitting in a wheelchair behind her. My eyelid twitched. The 100 Flowers banquet came to an end. The empress's fondness for Mingxu was practically written across her face. She even told Mingxu to stay and spend more time talking with the third prince. The two people who privately called each other idiot and hypocrite performed a scene of sweet affection in front of everyone else. Before climbing into the carriage, I seemed to sense something and turned around. My gaze happened to meet the sickly young man's. The corner of his mouth lifted. He smiled and nodded to me. Who is that? I asked Mingxu. The 5th prince, son of noble consort Zhuang. And his legs inside the carriage. Mingxu opened a brocade box, probably intending to take out a snack. Instead, she opened the wrong box. Inside was a stack of letters from the third prince. On the top letter, Mingxu had written a few comments of her own. Idiot, stupid poem. She snapped the box shut with impressive speed, but I had already seen everything clearly. The 5th prince's legs? When he was 12, he fell from his horse during the autumn hunt and broke a leg. The brake was set, but no one knows what else was damaged. In any case, he lost all feeling in both legs and was never able to walk again. Mingxu continued. I heard the fifth prince was accomplished in both social and martial studies and excelled at almost everything. If that autumn hunt had never happened, His Majesty would still be agonizing over who should become crown prince. It might never even have been Xiaozhen's turn. Her voice stopped abruptly. She hurriedly changed the subject. Mingjing, have you fallen for the fifth prince? I shook my head wearing a complicated expression. The fifth prince, the sixth prince, people like them always felt impossibly far away from me. What I was wondering now was whether Mingshu truly was the gentle, virtuous, noble lady everyone claimed she was. What respectable young lady secretly called her own betrothed, the future crown prince, an idiot behind his back? Older sister, your perfect image nearly collapsed right in front of me. The 100 Flowers banquet ended fairly early, and the Marquis household was extremely quiet when we returned. I had just reached the entrance when Mingshu grabbed my sleeve. Her expression was slightly stiff. Mingjing, let me go in first and take a look. Was there something I was not supposed to see? Naturally, I followed her at once. Father was indeed in his study, holding a military treatise and reading with intense concentration. As soon as the door opened, Mingshu visibly relaxed. You're back? The Marquis said. Where's Mother? Mingshu asked. She's in the small kitchen. She said she'd personally make goat soup for you two tonight, the Marquis replied. Then he beckoned to me. Come here, Mingjung, don't you like travelogues? Father just got several new ones. Clatter. The whole study fell silent. When the Marquis stood up, he had not noticed his sleeve sweeping over the travelogue lying open on the desk. The book fell to the floor, and its cover split away from the pages. I bent down to pick it up and discovered that the cover and the contents did not belong together at all. The cover read, 36 stratagems. The pages inside had absolutely nothing to do with military strategy. The opening line read, it is said that noble consort Zhuang and the Empress fell in love the moment they met. Behind His Majesty's back, one teased the other, and the other teased her in return. I was horrified. I felt as if I had been struck by lightning. I panicked. I went completely blank. The Marquis snatched the storybook about the romance between noble consort Zhuang and the Empress from my hands and forced out an extremely awkward smile. How did this sort of book get in here? The servant who bought the books must have picked up the wrong one. Father was only curious for a moment, so I opened it and took a look. Where are you? You promised to help me skewer the meat. Why are you hiding in here reading nonsense again? The study door was kicked open. The Marchioness charged in holding a saber. My pupils practically quaked as if an earthquake had struck. For a moment, I did not know whether to look at the Marquis or the Marchioness. Then I turned around. Mingshu had one hand raised high. Older sister, what are you doing? Caught in the act, she guiltily lowered her hand. My arm was getting stiff. I was just stretching it, smack. While all my attention was on Mingshu, the back of my head was struck again. Darkness swallowed my vision and I collapsed. When I woke again, 3 days had passed. My throat was dry and painful. My arms and legs were weak and I had no strength at all. The Marchioness had been keeping watch beside my bed. Seeing me awake, she immediately brought water to my lips. Good child. You must have caught a chill at the 100 Flowers banquet. I had practiced with sabers and spears since childhood and rarely fell ill. But whenever I did get sick, it came down on me like a landslide and left me utterly miserable. There was a little honey in the water, giving it a mild sweetness. The Marchioness wiped the cold sweat from my forehead with a cloth. Sleep a little longer. Your father has gone out and should be back soon. Your sister is keeping an eye on your medicine. Still groggy, I drifted back to sleep. When I opened my eyes again, the Marquis, the Marchioness, and Mingshu were all standing beside the bed, each looking at me with aching concern. I opened my mouth. My voice was slightly hoarse. I think I dreamed about all of you. Really? The Marquis looked both surprised and delighted. I dreamed Father was reading a storybook. It was even a romance between two women, noble consort Zhuang and the Empress. The corner of the Marquis's mouth twitched. I also dreamed Mother was chopping up a goat leg. The Marchioness silently looked away, and older sister raised her hand. I think she wanted to hit me. Dreams are always the opposite of reality, Mingshu advised me with complete seriousness. As soon as the door closed behind them, Mingshu ground her teeth. Look at what you two have done. You scared Mingjing so badly she actually fell ill. I told you she was timid. Confiscate Father's storybooks and Mother's sabers, spears, staffs, all of it. Limo told me I had run a fever for 2 days, and the Marquis, Marchioness, and Mingshu had taken turns watching beside my bed. My eyelashes trembled. What about them? I had been this sick. Given my adoptive parents' tempers, they should have stormed straight into the Marca household to see me. I had already been awake for several days, yet I had not seen either of them. Limo knew exactly whom I meant. Her lips trembled and she suddenly dropped to her knees. Something happened to your adoptive parents. It had happened too suddenly. People claimed the pork my adoptive mother sold had been poisoned. Someone had eaten it and died. And both husband and wife had been arrested. Poisoned pork? I laughed coldly. My adoptive father was the pickiest eater I had ever known. Every time my adoptive mother took pork out to sell, he cut off the best piece of pork belly and kept it for himself. The two of them had eaten from the same meat and were perfectly fine, yet someone else had died? The official who died had close ties to the third prince, Limo said. And the person who ordered Madame Lin and her husband arrested was the sixth prince. Limo reached out and gripped the corner of my robe. This involves the imperial princes. You must think carefully before doing anything. The Marquis and Marchioness will definitely rescue Madame Lin and her husband safely. Of course I trusted the Marquis and Marchioness. But these were the adoptive parents who had raised me. I truly could not sit quietly in the Marquis' household and wait for an outcome. Late that night, when everything was silent, a dark figure vaulted over the courtyard wall. The first place I went was my adoptive parents' home. I had no idea who had been feeding the pigs while they were gone, but every animal in the pen was sleek and fat, lying belly down and sleeping like the dead. I dug my treasures out from the corner where they had been hidden. I slung the bow and arrows over my back and took my pig butchering knife. Afraid that someone might see my face and implicate the Marquis household, I darkened my face and wrapped a black cloth over the lower half of it before setting out. My adoptive parents had taught me how to hunt and how to butcher pigs. I spun the knife once in my hand. Now I would use the very things they had taught me to rescue them. Finding out where they were being held was not difficult. I climbed onto a roof and discovered that someone was already there. Not one person. 3 black-clad figures. I silently flattened myself in a corner and waited until they had left before peeking out. Apparently I was not the only person with the same idea. The moment I appeared, another black-clad figure emerged from the other side. His movements were light and nimble. His skills were clearly far beyond my own amateurish moves. We looked at each other. Neither of us spoke first. Friend, I'm here to save someone. You and I have nothing to do with each other, so let's pretend we never met. The man in black nodded. I lifted one roof tile, confirmed the position below, and jumped down. Several guards were sleeping deeply and heard nothing at all. Even better. I would not have to fight them and risk making enough noise to draw more people. I had just relaxed when I heard the faintest rustle. The same man in black dropped down beside me. We stared at each other in silence. I tentatively took 2 steps forward. He took 2 steps too. I turned left and took 3 steps. When I looked back, he was still following me. Friend, my illness had not fully passed, so my voice was still hoarse. I deliberately lowered it. I'm here to rescue someone. What are you doing? Don't tell me you came to silence a witness. Looking for something? His answer was remarkably short. Sure enough, at the next fork we separated. I glanced back warily. Under the dim yellow candlelight, no one else was there. For some reason, I kept feeling that his voice sounded familiar. I immediately threw the thought out of my head. I had imagined all sorts of things. Prison conditions were harsh, and my adoptive parents both had fiery tempers and could not stand being wronged in the slightest. I had no idea how much they might have suffered inside. When I saw them, I absolutely could not let myself cry. But when I actually reached the cell door, the scene before me was nothing like what I had imagined. On the table sat more pastries than they could finish, and an enormous pork knuckle. My adoptive parents were sleeping so soundly they looked like 2 pigs themselves. Expressionless, I pulled out my pig butchering knife and used the back of the blade to tap them awake. Again, my adoptive mother shot upright. Are you going to let us sleep or not? Then she saw me and all her anger vanished. Mingjing, why are you here? My adoptive parents each grabbed one of my hands. You're not fully recovered yet, are you? Why are your hands so cold? Don't worry. The Marchioness already sent people to arrange everything. Your father and I haven't suffered at all. Look, we even have honey water. I wanted to take them out immediately. My adoptive father shook his head. If our names aren't cleared first, then even if your mother and I walk out of here, we'll still be criminals. Mingjung, go back to the Marquis' household right now, don't worry about us. What people do, heavens sees. The 6th prince behaves like this now. Sooner or later, heaven will settle the account with him. I climbed back onto the roof. As fate would have it, I ran into that man in black again. We exchanged one glance and said nothing. Then, without discussion, we both headed straight for the 6th prince's residence. I could not swallow this anger. It left me uncomfortable all over. I did not understand every twist and turn of their political struggles, but I could guess the general shape of things. His Majesty currently favored the third prince. Making him crown prince seemed only a matter of time. The sixth prince, who had competed with him for years, naturally resented it. By attacking someone connected to the third prince, the sixth prince was issuing a challenge. If you lofty nobles wanted to fight among yourselves, then fight. Why drag ordinary people like me, people who only wanted to live peacefully, into it? In that case, do not blame me. A prince's residence was nothing like an ordinary place. I cautiously drew my pig-butchering knife. An arm suddenly blocked my path. They're all unconscious. It was that man in black again. Why was he following me again? You did this. His gaze became complicated. No. Then the sixth prince must have offended far too many people. I tightened my grip on the knife and took one step back. What are you here for? His answer was unchanged. Looking for something. He could look for whatever he wanted. I had my own business. I slipped into the sixth prince's sleeping chamber. A large shape was wrapped inside the blankets. Heavy breathing filled the room. Even fatter than a pig, I muttered. The man in black had just entered behind me. At those words he nearly stumbled. Ahem. I had heard that the sixth prince was well-proportioned. By the candlelight I finally saw him clearly, so he was not fat. Some heroes had simply beaten him until he swelled up. The three black-clad figures I had seen earlier flashed through my mind. Since I had come all this way, it would be a waste not to hit him. I pulled the blanket over the sixth prince's head and gave him another sound beating. The man in black seemed to hear something outside. He quickly slipped several sheets of fur into his robe. Go, now, I immediately stopped. Almost the same instant we jumped out through the window, the chamber door flew open. Your Highness, come quickly. There are assassins. By the time the sixth prince's people rushed after us, the man in black and I had already reached an alley several streets away. The wind scattered the clouds and moonlight spilled over the road. Be careful on your way back, he said suddenly as we parted. I did not turn around. I only waved a hand. I know, fifth prince. The fifth prince, Xiao Yuhan. He had probably recognized me from the beginning. I, however, had found it nearly impossible to connect this nimble black-clad man with the sickly young nobleman in the wheelchair from the Hundred Flowers banquet. If I had not heard that familiar cough later, I might not have realized it at all. As expected, no one in the capital was simple. Even the supposedly crippled man in a wheelchair had been pretending. We did not reminisce or ask each other questions. We simply went our separate ways in the alley. I hid my treasures, changed clothes, and quietly returned to my room. My illness had not fully passed, and I had spent the whole night in the cold wind. I wrapped myself tightly in a blanket and slept deeply. The next morning, the Marchioness saw that my spirits were fairly good, and told me about my adoptive parents. Mingzheng, don't be afraid, I'll get Madame Lin and her husband out. Only Mingshu circled around me once, staring until goosebumps rose all over my skin. Older sister, is something wrong? Mingshu smiled. Nothing. I just met someone last night who looked a little like you. My heart jumped, but I forced my face to remain calm. The topic was quickly dropped. There's a banquet in the palace tonight. Before the Marquis and Marchioness left, they gave the two of us several reminders. Once they were gone, my eyelid kept twitching. Mingshu gave me another look. What is it? I answered solemnly. My right eyelid won't stop twitching. Something big must be about to happen. A twitching right eye means peach blossom luck. Mingshu placed a piece of dongpo pork into my bowl. Maybe it's something good. That night, the Marquess and Marchioness returned with dark expressions. They also brought an imperial decree. My heart dropped. Cui Mingzheng of the Cui family is of upright character and proper appearance, gentle and virtuous. She is hereby granted in marriage to the fifth prince, and shall become the fifth prince's consort. An auspicious date shall be chosen for the wedding. The eunuch smiled at me with narrowed eyes. Second young lady Kuei, accept the decree. This was going too far. After the Marquis explained what had happened, Mingshu was the first to slam the table and stand up. Ever since Xiao Yuhan began using a wheelchair, he had been completely removed from contention for the throne. His mother, noble consort Zhuang, had died young, and the power of her maternal family had gradually declined as well. The sixth prince and the others had never taken Xiao Yuhan seriously. Sometimes they even treated him as a joke. And had the sixth prince not just been beaten by some villain the night before? He had finally managed to reduce the swelling with cold compresses, and was still full of anger. Then he caught the faint smile in Xiao Yuhan's eyes and came up with a malicious idea. My reputation in the capital had not been particularly good since the incident with Miss Zhao falling into the lake. Recently, rumors had also spread that the Marquis household had once sent me to a countryside estate because I was unruly and crude. A willful, crude second young lady paired with a useless disabled prince. The sixth prince rolled his eyes and deliberately asked His Majesty to grant the marriage, dressing it up as concern for his fifth brother. I had gone far too easy on him last night. Mingzheng, if you don't want this marriage, you don't have to marry him, the Marchioness said. The Marquis immediately added, that's right, we only just managed to get you back. Whatever happens, we'll back you up. The sky isn't going to fall. When I stayed silent, Mingshu assumed I was upset. She pulled me aside to talk. Father and mother only want you to live happily and marry a man you truly want. What about you? I asked. Are you and the third prince truly in love with each other? At the mention of him, Mingshu's face twisted for a fraction of a second. Through gritted teeth, she said, the idiot and I mean the third prince and I, no one in this world understands me better than he does. It's just a marriage, that's all. Don't worry. Before the third prince and I marry, your wedding with the fifth prince can still be delayed. Given enough time, anything can change. Too many things had happened at once. Afraid I would overthink everything, the Marquise told Mingshu to take me to the family's mountain estate for a while. We could escape the summer heat and take our minds off our worries at the same time. Before leaving the capital, I visited my adoptive parents again. On my way out, I happened to run into Xiao Yuhan, dressed in black. Your Highness, are you here to look for something again? He turned toward me. I was waiting for you. How did you know I would come? You're leaving the capital. Of course you wouldn't feel at ease without seeing your adoptive parents first. My eyelid twitched, so he even knew the truth about the switched daughters. Leaving the capital is a good idea, he continued. After you go, I'll have someone deliver a letter every 3 days. Whatever you want to know, large matters, small matters, everything concerning your adoptive parents, I'll write it all down. To be truthful, I was extremely wary of him. So far I had only dealt with 3 imperial princes. The third prince was the empress's only son and Mingshu's betrothed, a master at changing his expression to suit the moment and the current favorite to become crown prince. The sixth prince was a sinister scoundrel who bullied the weak and would stop at nothing to get what he wanted. As for the fifth prince, when I first met him I thought he was a sickly young nobleman who seemed unfavored by his family, with not even a servant by his side. Later, after hearing Mingshu explain his past, I had even felt sorry for him. I never imagined the disability and frailty were both an act. Not only could those legs walk, he was extremely good at climbing walls. Terrifying. Why are you helping me? I asked. Is it because I discovered your secret? Cui Mingzheng, would you feel humiliated marrying me? What kind of question was that? I looked him up and down. He certainly wasn't bad looking. The legendary handsome man Pan An described in books was probably no better looking than Xiao Yuhan. His skills weren't bad either. He climbed walls more neatly than I did, and his hearing was so sharp that he could tell whenever someone approached. If I had skills like his, wouldn't I be able to butcher pigs even faster? As for his status, he was still an imperial prince. His mother had been noble consort Zhuang, a close friend of the empress. No matter how badly things went for him in the future, he would still be a wealthy prince of the realm. I answered honestly. No. He smiled. Good. Mingshu and I moved into the mountain estate. The third prince occasionally sent letters to Mingshu. Every 3 days, Xiao Yuhan also sent a letter to me. He wrote down everything in meticulous detail, even how many pork knuckles my adoptive parents ate at a single meal. After reading one such letter carefully, I looked up. Didn't you say you would send someone to deliver these? He gave a quiet hum of acknowledgement. So why did you come yourself? I had nothing else to do. Besides, the capital is full of eyes and ears. There, I can only sit in a wheelchair. Sitting too long makes my legs numb. I might as well come outside and walk around. Then he took a bow from his horse and tossed it to me. You have nothing to do at the estate anyway. Don't you want some exercise? The bow felt like a hot potato. I immediately threw it back. What are you saying? My older sister is here too. She is a proper young lady from a distinguished family. What if I come back carrying a freshly hunted, blood-stained wild fowl or rabbit and frighten her? For once he was left speechless. Actually, eldest young lady Kuei wouldn't. I stared at him suspiciously. He immediately changed. Third brother is here today too. I saw Miss Kuei go down the mountain with him. They won't be back for a while. He patted the little horse beside him. You can borrow this one. Let's see who can hunt more within 4 hours. It had been a long time since I had held a bow. My heart sped up and excitement surged through me. I swung onto his horse and looked down at him. Fine, let's compete. I spent half a month running wild at the mountain estate. Then the Empress's birthday approached. As the future third prince's consort, Mingshu had to return to the capital for the celebration. Before leaving, she cooked me a bowl of mung bean soup. I'll come back for you in 3 days. I accepted the bowl. The soup was neither too hot nor too cold, just right for drinking in one go. All right. After Mingxu left, I turned away expressionlessly and spat out every mouthful of the soup. Something was wrong. When I was little, I had been weaker but stubbornly insisted on learning from my adoptive mother how to subdue pigs. Before letting me try, she would mix a little sedative into the pig's food and wait until it became unsteady on its feet. Unless my nose was mistaken, someone had put the same sort of drug into that bowl of mung bean soup. Mingxu would never hurt me, so something must have happened that she did not want me to know about. I remembered what Xiao Yuhan had said before leaving earlier that day. The weather is about to change. Zheng, hurry back. I shot to my feet and rushed out the door. Limo, something has happened in the capital. The sixth prince had launched a rebellion. Rebel troops stormed the palace gates. Father, you have never truly seen me. The sixth prince stood in armor before the tightly shut doors of the great hall. Inside there was complete silence. He raised his voice. Before, all you saw was fifth brother. Then he became crippled, and all you saw was third brother. Now third brother is my prisoner too. I did everything better than anyone else because I wanted just one word of praise from you. I risked my life more times than I can count. Why did you still refuse to see me? I am your most outstanding son. If you refuse to give me that position, then I will take it myself. Sixth prince, aren't you afraid you'll bite your tongue boasting like that? The sixth prince turned in shock. I had raced home on horseback. The entrance to the Marquis household was already surrounded by the sixth prince's troops. I climbed over the wall and found the entire residence empty, so I looked toward the palace gates and headed there at once. I had just arrived when I heard the Marquis say those words. The Marquis had changed out of his scholar's robes and put on armor. A fierce aura radiated from him so naturally that, somehow, he even looked a great deal smarter. Marquis Kui! The sixth prince was startled at first and tensed all over. Then his expression relaxed slightly. Your troops aren't here. Do you really think you can stand against my army by yourself? If you know what's good for you, submit to me now. Once I take the throne and deal with third brother, I might even make your daughter one of my consorts. Who said the troops aren't here? A powerful voice rang out. The Marchioness and Mingxu suddenly appeared. Behind them came a vast army. Stop wasting words on him. Mingxu rolled her wrist. It's been a long time since I used a spear. Then, with my own eyes, I watched my supposedly gentle fake Harris older sister and my supposedly gentle Marchioness mother each seize a long spear and charge straight toward the sixth prince. Their movements were clean and decisive, without the slightest hesitation. For some reason, I remembered those two dreams. I pinched my arm hard. Good. This time it hurt, not a dream. So they had been pretending to be weak in front of me all along. I rubbed my eyes once, then again. With the army present, the six princes' forces quickly began to collapse. I was about to rush in and help when, the moment I jumped down from the wall, the sixth prince's men spotted me. I did not resist at all. I let them drag me in front of the sixth prince. Cuichong, Yuan Yu, look up and see who this is. The sixth prince pulled me in front of himself and held a dagger against my neck. You aren't afraid to die. What about your daughter? Creak. The doors of the great hall finally opened. His Majesty, the Empress, the third prince and the others were all inside. Rebellious son. Victory and defeat have already been decided. Order your men to drop their weapons and surrender at once. You say the outcome is already decided? The sixth prince's expression turned wild, his eyes bloodshot. I have Cui Mingjung in my hands. Look at Cui Chong and Yuan Yu and see who still dares to move. Even if I die, I'll drag someone down with me. I had never seen the Marquis and Marchioness look so grave. Mingxu even stepped forward and offered to exchange herself for me. Mingjung is weak. If you need a hostage, take me instead. No. The sixth prince sneered. Before today, I didn't even know you knew martial arts. What if you decide you don't care whether you live and attack me? While everyone argued, my gaze passed over them and found Xiao Yuhan's standing in a corner. The corner of my mouth lifted slightly. Sixth prince, why don't you look carefully at the person you're holding? A cold gleam flashed. I drew the dagger hidden at my waist, cut through the ropes binding me in an instant, and pressed the blade against a vital spot on the sixth prince. Smack! With my free hand, I slapped him across the face. You took me hostage? Smack! Another slap. And you wanted me to die with you? After several slaps, the sixth prince's face was swollen like a pig's head and his gaze finally cleared. I turned around. My entire family was staring at me with their mouths open. I let out a loud, awkward laugh. He was even easier to subdue than a pig being fattened for New Year. The sixth prince's rebellion finally came to an end. My adoptive parents were cleared of all charges and released. For the next several days, the atmosphere in the Marquis household was slightly strange. It took some effort, But at last everyone gathered together, the Marquis, the Marquise, my adoptive parents, Mingshu and me. 6 people sat around one table. We looked at one another. No one wanted to speak first. I cleared my throat. So you really did roast goat in the middle of the night? Father's storybook and mother's saber weren't things I dreamed up. Now that everyone's cards were on the table, no one bothered hiding anymore. My adoptive mother sighed. I asked around very carefully before we sent you back. Everyone said the people in the Marca household were scholarly and refined. The Marchioness chimed in. It was all about appearances, all of it. Out in the world your reputation is something you build yourself. The Marquis looked puzzled. But I was told Mingzheng was a delicate girl who loved reading travelogues. My adoptive father laughed dryly. Haha, that was fake too. Mingzheng is a strong, sturdy girl. She loves running all over the mountains, and when she has free time she butchers a few pigs. So every single one of us had been acting. Once that conversation was mostly over, the Marquise brought up my marriage again. Mingzheng and the 5th prince have only met a handful of times. If the two of you have no feelings for each other, I'll enter the palace and ask His Majesty for permission to cancel the engagement. We shouldn't hold either of you back. Clack. A faint sound came from the courtyard. Xiao Yuhan, who had arrived bearing gifts, stood frozen outside. Xiao Yuhan and I talked in the courtyard. I was a straightforward person, so I went straight to the point. I've thought everything through these past few days. I do like you, but I like the wide world outside even more. I don't want a marriage to bind me and force me to suppress my real nature. I'm willing to marry you, but I don't want to become the 5th prince's consort, confined by rules and conventions. He understood. He spoke slowly. Then I'll go back at once and have the 5th prince die suddenly of illness. Do you have to curse yourself that viciously? The identity of the 5th prince is also a shackle to me. If I truly wanted to fight for the throne, I would not have sat in a wheelchair for 10 years. That position suits 3rd brother better. He continued. The times I secretly entered those places, I was looking for evidence that 6th brother planned to rebel, so I could give it to 3rd brother. 3rd brother is intelligent. He has probably known for some time that I can stand. One more 5th prince or one less would make no difference. Ajung, I want to go with you. I froze for a moment. Then a new idea came to me. The wedding between the 2nd young lady of the Kui family and the 5th prince was held with extraordinary splendor. The scarlet wedding procession stretched for 10 li rally 3 miles, and my bridal sedan was carried by 8 bearers. The Marquis and Marchioness, together with my adoptive parents, nearly emptied their coffers. The night before I married, Mingshu and I shared one bed. We told each other stories from our childhood, until we collapsed together in a laughing heap. Being switched at birth wasn't entirely bad, I said. At least now we each have another pair of parents who love us. The moment I finished, Mingshu pinched my cheek. Mingzheng, are you and the 5th prince really in love with each other? I nodded, then turned the question back on her. Older sister, do you truly like the 3rd prince? Mingshu started counting his faults on her fingers. That man doesn't know martial arts. All he can do is read a few worn-out books, write a few essays and compose a few lines of poetry. He's a fool who won't even lift a finger to do anything himself. If I weren't there, what would he do? I scratched my head. I truly did not understand the way Mingshu and the 3rd prince got along. On the wedding day, both of my mothers cried as they saw me into the bridal sedan. I comforted them. Didn't I already tell you? Even after I marry Xiao Yuhan, I can still live exactly as I did before. Who could have guessed that, on the wedding night, the moment my bridal veil was lifted, I would immediately take off the ceremonial wedding robe and reveal a dark outfit meant for traveling at night underneath. He had already changed into a fitted narrow-sleeved outfit of his own. The boat is waiting at the dock, he said. Haven't you always wanted to visit Chuzhou? I climbed out through the window and leaped onto the roof. Then let's see who reaches the dock first. Inside the 5th prince's residence, the wedding guests were still raising cups and laughing amid the celebration. Xiao Yuhan and I slipped away from the crowd and ran toward the dock toward freedom.